Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. After some technical difficulties yesterday, we are back for the Notre Dame football rundown this week. And boy, we got a loaded show for you guys today. We are talking about, some breakout players. We're going to give a combine preview because obviously that's happening about a couple blocks away from my apartment right now. We're going to be talking about some 2027 quarterbacks to get to know. But Brian, before we get there, kind of the tale as old as time with Notre Dame and us being Notre Dame fans as well as covering the team. There's kind of just this ongoing battle that we always just kind of every couple of cycles we just got to refresh and debunk as to why Notre Dame is not in the conference. And so first part of today's show is going to be somewhat of a history lesson for those who still are willing to die on the hill that Notre Dame should be in a conference. And Brian, I'm looking forward to this conversation, man, because it's starting to get real interesting.
I am. We'll talk about our breakout players for offense. We're going to do preview the combine, like Trev said. We're going to talk about some 2027 quarterback stuff. But this originally wasn't going to be on the topic today, the list of topics today. And it's not listed on the rundown, the title. But reason we're adding it is, so at 2 o'clock, I was on Crane and Company today at 11 a.m. And they're doing this new debate thing, this debate show. And they asked me if I wanted to be on with a guy from Miami, a guy named Alex Dono. And I said, look, if this is going to be like a real professional debate, then I'd love to. And they're like, oh, yeah, we're not trying to do all this craziness. And they were correct. It was a good back and forth debate. There wasn't we weren't interrupting each other. It's like, you make your point, I make mine. It was a really nice debate. I enjoyed being on with Alex and I appreciated it. And Alex is a friend of Brian Smith, who's obviously a longtime friend of mine. The first part of it was the Notre Dame needs to join a conference. And of course we get the typical, they have to join a conference. It's not fair. They play a cupcake schedule and then not being being in a conference somehow changes that. And the MOU and the best part about the memorandum of understanding is I think it was might've been Blaine Crane or said this, or might've been David Cohn, but they were like, it's hilarious that people are upset that Notre Dame is guaranteed a spot in the top 12 playoff as long as they are ranked in the top 12. Like the audacity of, you know what I mean? Like that's what they're upset about. But it's just, and then it's the same thing. You take shots at USC fans and all they have is like, join a conference. It's so freaking lame. And it's like, well, I heard my favorite podcaster said it, and I don't really actually have a reason why, but I'm going to say it because it makes me sound like, I'm smart because I'm repeating what every other moron on Twitter said, and it's so frustrating. I'm not taking a shot at Alex here. I mean, I understand where he's coming from. I'm more taking a shot at just the stupidity you see on X and from other fan bases. And the whole thing is just so annoying, Trev. And it is hilarious that nobody has yet to give me a reason why Notre Dame has to join a conference. Not one that makes any sense whatsoever. You have to join a conference in order to get a tough schedule. Okay. That might have meant something 5 years ago. If you were in the SEC West 5 years ago, you were going to have a tough schedule. Didn't care who you played out of conference. You were going to have a tough schedule. That's not the case now. Look at the team that just won the national championship. Indiana, they're in the Big Ten. Look at their schedule. Look at their schedule this year. Here's their schedule. North Texas, Howard, Western Kentucky, Northwestern, at Rutgers, at Nebraska, home against Ohio State, at Michigan, home against Minnesota, home against USC, at Washington, home against Purdue. That's a gauntlet of a schedule. Texas Tech, this is their schedule. Abilene Christian, Oregon State, Houston, Sam Houston State, Colorado, Arizona State, Cincinnati, Arizona, West Virginia, Oklahoma State, Baylor, TCU. This is Oregon's schedule, Trev. Boise State, at Oklahoma State, Portland State, at USC, home against UCLA, home against Nebraska, at Illinois, home against Northwestern, at Ohio State. That's a tough one. Home against Michigan, at Michigan State, home against Washington. Notre Dame has to join a conference so they can have that schedule. Explain to me why that's the case. I'm looking at Oregon's schedule, and they played two teams that have been in the playoffs the last 2 years, Boise State and Ohio State. Okay. Cool. Texas Tech is playing 0 teams that have been in the playoffs the last 2 years. No, I'm sorry, 1, Arizona State 2 years ago. Indiana plays 1 team that's been in the playoffs the last 2 years. Notre Dame plays 2. So it's such a lazy debate, and it's just so easy to disprove. Oh, well, what about Ohio State's schedule? What about Ohio State's schedule? That's a hard schedule. But being in the Big Ten doesn't guarantee you that schedule. You know what I mean? And I was like, well, look, Notre Dame in 2 years, Trev, is going to play Texas, Arkansas. Actually, let's pull up the Notre Dame 2028 schedule, because you and I were just talking about it. But you want to talk about like gauntlet of schedules? Like let's look at what Notre Dame gets to play in a couple years. So yeah, unfortunately, this year's schedule isn't as tough because Michigan State's down, Stanford is down, right? I mean, Syracuse is down. They're not the 10-win team they were 2 years ago. Wisconsin is down. When Notre Dame scheduled Wisconsin, they were a much better football team. But in 2 years, Notre Dame plays Texas, Arkansas, at Auburn, at Virginia Tech, home against Clemson, home against Miami, and at Pitt. That's a soft schedule. In 2029, Notre Dame plays Alabama, at Texas, at NC State, at Florida State, at Clemson that season. So this notion that, well, you get to pick and choose who you play. So do you. Any team in a conference gets to pick and choose who they play. 2 ways. 1, you get to pick your non-conference schedule. So Indiana gets to pick North Texas, Howard, and Western Kentucky. I would like to point out to you, when you look at Oregon's schedule, when you look at Texas's Tech schedule, Notre Dame plays more FBS teams than both of those teams. They play more FBS opponents than Penn State. So this notion that by joining a conference, don't even get me started on Penn State's schedule, but this notion that joining a conference means they get to play a tougher schedule, based on what? You have no evidence of that. And you can cherry pick a couple tough schedules and okay, cool. And then I can cherry pick some terrible schedules that are definitely worse than the one that Notre Dame plays this year. So the whole thing is just stupid, right? And we're seeing it. Somebody in the chat, now do Ohio State's schedule. That's the point. Like, you're not smart enough to realize you're making my point for me. There's an utter ridiculous imbalance in scheduling now in college football because the Big Ten has 18 teams. You can't create a balanced schedule for 18 teams in a league. You can't create a balanced schedule in the SEC when there's 16 teams in the league. When there was 8 to 10, you could do that. When the ACC had 8 to 9 teams, you could do that. When the Big Ten had 10 teams, you could do that because you had to play every team in the Big Ten. You could evaluate their schedule and say it's pretty much the same as everybody else. But now you can't do that because, as I said, you can cherry pick Ohio State and I can cherry pick Indiana and Penn State. And guess what they all have in common, Trevor? They're all in the Big Ten. So how does joining a conference benefit Notre Dame? Because somehow magically, wave a magic wand, whoof, tough schedule. 1 year, and then the next year it's garbage, which is exactly what Indiana and Penn State have this year.
It's just such a tired argument. It is. I mean, look, what people still pay attention to are the names on the jerseys and where they play because of college football lore. Hey, SEC fans, I hate to break it to you. And some people may disagree with this still. Playing in the swamp doesn't mean jack to me. They haven't had a double-digit win season since 2019. Hey, Big Ten fans, I don't care if you play on the road against Nebraska because one time that 1 year they sold out a 90,000-seat stadium to their volleyball team. I don't care. Nebraska hasn't beaten a ranked opponent in a decade. Conference affiliate, that's such a weird thing to me, is loving your conference. If you're a Green Bay Packers fan, like I know our guy Clayton is, do you hope that the Bears go on to win the Super Bowl because you're both in the NFC North? That stuff is weird to me. I don't understand that line of thinking. I don't. And I think college football might be one of the only sports that think that way. I think it's odd. I really do. But we have to get out of this just looking at the names on the jerseys. Because when you whittle it down to its bare bones and you evaluate them for a football team, you start to realize, like I've seen so much about how, Notre Dame added BYU. Who cares? BYU is not good. It's like, well, that's because you don't perceive them to be good. They're on the brink of making the playoffs. They lost smart. 2 games.
Right.
They lost 2 games in 2025 to one team. A team that was in the college football playoff quarterfinals and received a bye. We got to get out of this thing. Well, you didn't go schedule Bama. And it's like, okay, neither did you. Like, what are we talking about?
BYU's not as good as USC, Trev. BYU's been ranked more in the last 6 years than USC. And oh, by the way, they played each other in like 2022. Do you remember who won that game, Trev? Yeah, BYU. BYU did. Not a bowl game. It was a regular season game. BYU won. But they're BYU and they're USC, and people look at the helmet. Because the reality is there's a lot of college football fans who don't know anything beyond what they're told to know. Or they're not in this league. Okay. Sure. There are some Big Ten schedules this year that are very hard. We've talked about Ohio State as a very hard schedule, which is not a Notre Dame problem. Like, what does Notre Dame have to do with that? Why aren't they pissed at Indy? Why do we have to play this schedule in Indiana and Penn State and have to play that schedule? How is that fair? Well, you brought that on yourself. I also want to do a little history lesson for people. This is the question that I asked. They said, Brian, Notre Dame should join a conference. And my first response, and I paused and said, why? By the way, that debate is going to come out at 2:00, and they pick the winner by – you guys pick the winner. Most responses. So what I'll ask all of you in the chat today is, when that comes out on Twitter, go on there, vote, say, go Irish, say, Brian won. Be respectful, because Alex was respectful to me. The debate was respectful. I enjoyed the debate. The topic pisses me off. I don't have an issue with Alex. What I thought was kind of wild, though, is I'm debating about Notre Dame's soft schedule with someone from Miami. And I just want to point out to everybody on like planet Earth that actually looks at Miami's schedule is, how is Miami's schedule tougher than Notre Dame's? Can somebody explain that to me? If you look at Miami's schedule this year, their toughest opponent is Notre Dame. They play one team that won more than 9 games last year. Trev, that's Notre Dame. They play only 3 teams that won more than 9 games last year. Notre Dame plays 3 teams that won 10 or more games last year. 3. And they actually all won more than 10 games. They played teams that won 13, 12, and 11. And if Miami keeps telling us that, well, we're better than Notre Dame, well, all right, cool. So Notre Dame's toughest game is harder than your toughest game. Is that what you're admitting? The second best team on Miami's schedule this year, basically looked at last year, is Duke at 9-5. The third best team on Miami's schedule for this year, based on last year's schedule, Wake Forest. Their next best opponent, Pitt. Their next best opponent, Clemson. Their next best opponent, Central Michigan. And I'm supposed to believe that that's a tougher schedule than one that Notre Dame, where SMU, who beat Miami last year, it has the 4th best record on Notre Dame's schedule for next year. I'm supposed to somehow say oh no, oh yeah, that's a way tougher schedule. That's the hilarious thing, is I have somebody from Miami telling me that Notre Dame plays a cupcake schedule. Your second best opponent is Duke, whose quarterback you just stole, whose best wide receiver you just stole. So the whole thing is lazy, but let's do a little history lesson. Why is Notre Dame one of only 2 remaining independents, Trevor? Before you were born, there were over 20, almost 30 independent programs. In 1988, when Notre Dame won the national title, there was over 20. I think there was 24 or 25 independent teams. Why did they stop being independent? Was there a rule passed? Was there a college rule passed that said no, every team has to join a conference except Notre Dame? We're going to give you an exception. No. Let's do a little history lesson, okay? There's an organization that formed in 1977 called the College Football Association, who basically signed their own TV deal in 1981. And basically all the conferences, there was 62 teams, all the conferences, Notre Dame, Penn State, some other independents, all joined the CFA. And so they determined who was going to be on TV. There was between 60, 80 games on TV on a weekly basis. They chose, if you were the SEC, You couldn't sign your own deal. You had to sign at the CFA, and then they would get you on TV. 1984, the NCAA starts threatening teams that are part of the CFA, saying, hey, we want to determine who's going to be on TV. We're going to come after you and penalize you if you go outside of what we want. Typical NCAA stupidity. So in 1984, actually 1981, Georgia and Oklahoma, the border regions for Oklahoma, and then Georgia enjoined the lawsuit, sued the NCAA. And in 1984, the ruling was handed down and they won. So the NCAA, as of 1984, could no longer determine who gets to be on TV. The CFA did. The College Football Association then determined it. And you started to see, more games on TV. 1991, Notre Dame leaves the CFA to sign their own deal with NBC. Around that same time, you started to see other leagues, other independent teams start joining other leagues. Penn State leaves in 1991. They got rejected by the Big East, which was done by the Big East, and so they went to the Big Ten. Miami went to the Big East. Florida State went to the ACC, and slowly but surely teams left. Louisville originally went to Conference USA because they couldn't even get into a bigger league, and they eventually worked their way up to the Big East. And so those teams chose to join a conference. Why did they choose to join a conference? Because they couldn't get the same deal that Notre Dame did. Why? Because their brand power wasn't good enough. They needed to join a conference. There was no rule. This was all about TV money. All about TV money. Then the game completely changes in 1995 when the CFA is it's still in control, but Notre Dame and some other things have happened. 1995, the SEC and the Big East signed an exclusive deal with CBS because at the time, ABC carried all those rights. They signed in 1995. CBS signs the SEC. Within 2 years, the CFA was dead. And then leagues started signing their own deals. The reason all these teams left, also in 1991, Arkansas went to the SEC, and it all happened because of the TV revenue that was starting to directly flow into the leagues. So no longer everybody was kind of making a similar amount of money and a small number of teams were on TV. So teams started joining leagues to protect their non-football sports, to put their football programs in good positions so that they could then take advantage of the revenue. I could find you articles from the 90s about how Miami got this windfall of money coming into their program because they were now in the Big East. It was all about money. It was all about TV money, which I'm fine with. That's why Notre Dame signed with NBC. That's the direction it was going. There was no rule that was passed that said you have to join a conference. None. Those teams joined conferences because that was their path to getting a deal. Now, here we get fast forward to recently. Notre Dame signs a memorandum of understanding that if they finish in the top 12, they get in the playoff. That's not fair. Notre Dame has a special deal. You know who else has a special deal, Trevor? Every single Power 4 team in college football. Every single one. Because it says this: if you win your conference, no matter where you're ranked, you're in. People forget this. People don't want to talk about this. The new MOU, the new rules that include Notre Dame is in the so if Notre Dame finishes in the top 12 of a 12-team playoff, they're in. The horror of that. But if Duke wins the ACC in 2026 with an 8-5 record, they're in the playoffs. If the SEC champ ranks 13th or 15th or 18th, they're in the playoffs. If the Big 12 champ ranks 18th, they're in the playoffs. Because that's the new rule that goes into effect starting this year. So Notre Dame got left out last year because the MOU wasn't in effect. It didn't help Duke last year because it wasn't in effect. It goes into effect now. Notre Dame has the benefit. Now every other team does as well. Well, we have to win our conference. Yeah, Notre Dame has to be ranked in the top 12. And we just saw that the committee has no problem arbitrarily dropping Notre Dame in the rankings to fit their agendas. So Notre Dame really needs to be in the top 10. Because if they're 11th or 12th, they can just drop them. Just drop them to 13. Well, what if they don't play? You mean like like this year when Notre Dame didn't play and Miami didn't play and they just decided to jump Miami over Notre Dame for no reason whatsoever. So they really got to be in the top 10. Every team, every Power 4 team has a deal in the MOU that if they win their league, they're in no matter where they're ranked. Well, why is Notre Dame different? Because Notre Dame's not in a league. And every other team had the right to negotiate their own deals if they chose. They chose not to because they joined a league. If Miami wanted to negotiate their own rights, if Ohio State wanted to negotiate their own rights, if Michigan wanted to negotiate their own rights, they can do that. Just inform your conference that when your grant of rights is up, you're leaving. And you're going to be independent. And you're going to sign your own TV deal. There's no rule saying you can't do that. None. Not one. No rule. So every Power 4 team enters 2026 with a guarantee from the committee that if you do this, you get an automatic bid. Every single one. Well, we're not going to win the SEC. Well, that's your fault for sucking. Notre Dame has to be really good to get in. So this notion that Notre Dame has a exception carved out is just flat out it's either a lie from some people or it's ignorance from others. Because every Power 4 team now has a guarantee to get into the playoffs. They just have to win their league. And for some teams, that's going to be a lot easier than others. That's going to be a lot easier for Penn State and Indiana than it will be for Ohio State. Right? Because Ohio State has a much tougher road. But Ohio State could lose to Texas by 100, and it won't matter. They just won the Big Ten. They could lose to Texas by 100 points, and it's over by halftime, and they have a running clock in the second half, all of that. And they could drop out of the top 25 and never get back in because they could say, hey, listen, we're not going to have a team that's ranked that lost 100-0 in our top 25. But if Ohio State wins the Big Ten, it doesn't matter. They're in the playoffs. So every team now has that. So that's your comeback to anyone that says, well, why does Notre Dame get special conference? They don't. They're just the only one that has to do it on their own. And who okayed that? Every Power 4 commissioner gave the okay for that. So I'm tired of the ignorance. I wanted to do that little quick history lesson, Trevor, to people understand. The only reason Notre Dame is not in the league is because they sacrificed making more money. And if you really want to go back in it, let's not forget Notre Dame tried to join a conference 3 times and got rejected by the Big Ten 3 times. And that forced them to become the barnstorming national program that they are today. So if Notre Dame had their way, they'd be in the Big Ten. The Big Ten said, no thanks. We don't like Catholics. And so Notre Dame did their own thing. So I just want to remind people of all of this. So you can spew all you want, join a conference and sound just like every other idiot on X. Or you can actually, learn things and realize that Notre Dame doesn't actually have anything unique that everybody else doesn't have. Notre Dame is given a pathway to get in. Every other team in college football has been in the Power 4 has been given a pathway to get in. Notre Dame, you got to rank in the top 10. Ohio State, you got to win the Big Ten or rank in the top 10. You could be ranked 11th or you could be ranked 13th, win the Big Ten and get in the playoffs. If Notre Dame's ranked 13th, they're at home. That's what they sacrifice by not being in a conference. So people just need to get a clue. I just really dislike how ignorant some people are, willfully ignorant of certain things. Like, I just don't want to know, because if I know, then I can't keep saying this dumb, stupid thing that I just can say all the time because I think I'm owning the Irish fans by saying, join a conference, as if we're no, you said our kryptonite. We can no longer debate anymore because he said join a conference. Well, we did join your conference for 1 year, and we made the title game. We've been in your conference for 1 year, Miami, and we've made as many ACC title games as you have, having been in the league for over a decade. Almost 20 years now. You know what I mean? So y'all can miss me. Y'all can miss me with that. Just learn things. It's not hard. It's not going to, I promise you, Trev, for you fans out there, non-Notre Dame fans or anybody, your brain won't explode by actually doing real research and learning things. Like scientifically, it's been proven that if you actually read things and learn things and become knowledgeable, your brain won't in fact explode, and you might actually have a better, overall quality of life by not being ignorant anymore. Scientific studies on that, Trev.
It's a heck of a concept. Might have to try that. Maybe. The uprising from the MOU is hilarious. And the only reason why people are upset about it is because Notre Dame is individually listed. Why? Because they were one of two. I mean, I guess if they wanted to, UConn, I suppose, could try to make a fight to if they rank somewhere in the top 12, I suppose. But it goes back to every scenario that you laid out. The funniest thing that I think about is, back to, CBS Sports put out a college football playoff projection. They put Notre Dame second, and their rationale for putting them at second was because of the MOU. The MOU doesn't say if Notre Dame is ranked, then they have to get a bye. That's not what it says. You elected to put that in there. People are up in arms because outlets like FanDuel have Notre Dame as the number one odds to win the national championship this year. I hate to break it to you. That's because they're a good football team and they bring a lot back. It's not because of the MOU. If you have the MOU, you don't just get handed the trophy. Very few teams just get handed a playoff spot. And one of them we saw last year, and it was in a part of a conference. So it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't. You and I were talking on the phone before this, and people get so upset about this. Here's the benefit of playing in a 12-team playoff. You have to earn your way to get to the national title game. Let's just grant the premise and say that we thought, which we don't, but we just thought Notre Dame was playing a softer schedule than what Elkhart High School football is going to play this fall in Elkhart, Indiana. Let's just grant that premise. But then they get to the playoffs, and then they have to play Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, and then Oregon to win a national championship. You have to go earn it on the field. It doesn't matter. Even in the 14 playoff, Michigan played one of the most woeful schedules I've ever seen. They didn't play a ranked opponent until November in the regular season, and they won a national championship, went undefeated. Why? Because, they cheated, and they earned it in the playoffs. They didn't cheat in the playoffs, but they earned it on the field. Indiana this past season started out their season against Old Dominion and Indiana State and the Indianapolis Fire Department, and they made the national championship game, and nobody batted an eye because they played in the Big Ten. We just got to get out of this looking at the logos and looking at all this and then assuming that this is going to be a hard game because, I know that name. Yep. We just got to get out of that. It's getting ridiculous, man.
Yep.
It really is.
Yep, it is. It's very frustrating. Very frustrating. And it's lazy. That's the biggest thing about it. It's lazy. And I wish people from Notre Dame would make this case more often. Like, I really wish we just value our independence. Why? Explain why. Because here's the reality for all the people. Notre Dame's greedy. Notre Dame could make more TV money if they join the Big Ten. No question about it. They can make more TV money if they join the SEC. No question about it. They're smart enough to understand that it's not TV. Unlike a lot of teams, TV money isn't the main driver of this for Notre Dame. That's part of it. But it's just so frustrating. And I love your point, Trev, because back in the day when it was a two-team, basically BCS game, sure, it could matter who you played. But I remember BYU being undefeated one year and for a long time, and they weren't even ranked in the top 10 because they were playing Coastal Carolina and, basically a G5 schedule, right? I mean, you're playing 10 Power 4 teams next year. Yeah, but they're not good teams. All right, cool. Being in a conference doesn't guarantee that I'm going to play 10 good teams. Indiana's a great example. Michigan 23, great example. So the whole thing is just freaking frustrating. And I'm just sick and tired of just the lazy arguments that people make. And somebody said, why does this matter? Who cares what people on X say? Because it's the same crap regurgitated on ESPN, the same crap that gets regurgitated by people at CBS Sports. It's the same crap see people get regurgitated on 3 and Fox Sports and everything else. So it's like, that's why it matters. And you say, well, why are we talking about this? Because it's a college football topic, and this is a freaking college football show. Do you want us to address the State of the Union? Would that be more relevant to you? Would that matter more to you? This is a college football show. We're talking about a college football topic. Yeah.
Yeah, it's because all those people have to hear it from somewhere, bro. They always have to hear it from somewhere. And yeah, sure, you'll get some people that they hear it from, their great uncle who had a neighbor who's, had a cousin that went to Michigan and hates Notre Dame. Sure. But then you also have people that hear it from legitimate talking heads around the country in college football.
Yeah.
People who people tune into regularly to hear that stuff from. That's why it matters. I'm with you, man. But
it matters because exactly. And it matters because it bleeds into things that are done in boardrooms. That's why it matters.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're seeing people start to say, well, we're going to do this to Notre Dame. We're going to do that to Notre Dame. And so, yeah, it freaking matters. It absolutely matters. We saw Notre Dame drop last year. Do you think they're dropped if they're a Big Ten team? Nope. They could have had if they were in the Big Ten last year, they probably would have had an easier schedule. Because if Notre Dame was a Big Ten team, you know who they wouldn't have played last year? Both Miami and Texas A&M.
Facts.
What's Notre Dame's record last year if they have Indiana's schedule? At worst, 11-1. And guess what 11-1 gets you? A home playoff game. So,
if not a bye, if they went to the conference championship and won,
right?
Potentially,
right. I'm saying like 11-1 and they don't even get in. I'm just like at worst 11-1 and they're hosting a home playoff game. At worst,
100%.
Yeah. So the whole thing is because your point is spot on, Trevin, and we'll wrap it up with this. If you're not good enough, you're going to get exposed in the playoffs, like Alabama did.
I was just about to say,
like Texas Tech did. You know what I mean? Like if you're not good enough, you're going to get exposed. Notre Dame got in for their, you lost to Northern Illinois. All right, cool, but they beat Georgia, they beat Indiana, they beat Penn State. So the whole Northern Illinois loss, the whole your schedule is soft, didn't matter. Indiana doesn't deserve the number 1 seed. They didn't play anybody. All right, cool. Well, that stopped mattering the minute they went out and beat Alabama by 35, beat Oregon by 34, and beat Miami to win the title. That stopped mattering. Well, this team got beat and that team would have beat Indiana. Okay, but that team got beat by a team that Indiana beat or got beat by a team that got beat by a team that Indiana beat. So the whole thing is just, it's silly. If they're not good enough, they're going to get bumped out. Well, that's unfair. To who? The number 12 team? Or the number 14 team who should have got in? Like, who's getting bumped out for Notre Dame? The 4th or 5th best Big Ten or SEC team? Well, if Notre Dame joined your conference, they're getting bumped out anyway by Notre Dame. Like, the whole thing is stupid. Like, this hurts you if Notre Dame joins your league, right? You don't think Notre Dame's going to be immediately one of the best teams in the Big Ten or the ACC? Come on. Give me a break.
And also, for anybody that forgets how playoffs are structured, if you're the 11th best team in a 12-team playoff, and then at the end of the year, there ends up being 12 teams better than you, you get bumped regardless.
Yes.
Because that's how playoffs work.
Exactly.
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 Come on, man.
Exactly. Like, Michigan played a soft schedule in 2023. Well, guess what? It didn't matter because they went out and beat Alabama and beat Washington. Because if they weren't good, they'd have lost one of those 2 games. Indiana didn't play anybody. Okay, cool. Who cares? Because they went out and destroyed Alabama, destroyed Oregon, and beat Miami. And outplayed Miami, in my opinion, the entire game. It was a good game. Miami battled their tails off that game. But no one's now saying, well, Indiana's schedule's soft. Why is nobody talking about how Indiana's schedule's soft? Well, look what they proved. Yeah, look what Notre Dame proved. They went to the title game. So the whole thing is, why is nobody talking about how soft Miami's schedule is, which is softer than Notre Dame's, by the way? Because, well, Miami proved they're good. Exactly. So did Notre Dame. So I'm frustrated by it because I'm just sick and tired of just the lazy. And then you'll see some Notre Dame fans grab onto this too, and that's when I really get pissed off. When Notre Dame fans don't ever give in to your enemy. Don't ever give in to the arguments people that hate you make. Because guess what? Giving into their arguments won't make them like you. It just means they win and they still hate you. They get their way and they still hate you.
Yeah, they'll find something else. They always do. Always do.
Exactly.
Well, folks, that's going to do it for part one of today's show. Don't go anywhere. We have much more coming on this Notre Dame football rundown. But before we get there, be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know whenever we go live. Be sure to share this podcast with your friends and family. Anybody that you know loves Notre Dame and college football as much as you do. But the best way to stay in tune, spring ball's right around the corner. Believe it or not, March starts on Sunday. And so spring football is going to be around the corner before you know it. Best way to stay in tune and the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, in part two of today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, we're going to put on our NFL lenses for a little bit here, probably next half an hour or so. And we're going to talk about the NFL Combine that's going on just down the road from my apartment, actually, at Lucas Oil Stadium. All the athletes are there now, going through their media days. So we're going to talk about the 6 Notre Dame players that got invited to the Combine and really just kind of break down what they need to do this weekend, all encompassing between the media days and the testing, whether it's the on-the-field drills or, the 40 and the bench press, because each story, each player is a little bit different. But, as the offseason has kind of gone on between more analysts diving into film, some players performing at their postseason, Senior Bowls or the East-West Shrine Bowl. Some Notre Dame draft stocks are starting to rise. And, this combine could be kind of the culmination of all of that coming together. So very excited to see what they do this year down in Indy.
This is the graphic that Notre Dame put out earlier to show their 6 combine folks. And then this is the, let me go to this, Trev. This is the schedule. So I'm going to actually blow this up a little bit so people can see it. This is the workout schedule that they're going to have. So Friday, you'll see Eli Raridan workout on Friday. That's with the tight ends. On Saturday, you'll see Malachi Fields work out with the receivers, then Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, and then, of course, on Sunday, linemen always go last. Billy Schrouth and Emil Wagner will go. And you're actually saying, Trev, you talked about guys rising. Obviously, Malachi Fields, I've seen at least now 2 mock drafts that have Malachi Fields in it. I've seen now 2 mock drafts that have Jadarian Price in the first round. I've seen a mock draft that had Billy Schrouth in round 2. I see, draft Twitter, which is, I have a love-hate relationship with. There's a lot of love going around to Billy Schrouth. And they'll always say exactly what he said, Trev, the injuries, but outside the injuries, man, there's a lot of good film with this guy. And so I think those are things you look at this is a big event for the Notre Dame players. There's no doubt, because this is an event where you're getting a chance to kind of, number one, impress people with who you are. And you and I both know that all 6 of the kids at the combine this weekend are going to blow people away with their personalities. Emil Wagner is going to charm the pants off of a bunch of GMs and head and offensive coaches, line coaches, and stuff like that. So will Jadarian Price. So will Jeremiah Love. So will Malachi Fields. So will Eli Raridan. And so will Billy Schrouth. And then it comes down to, okay, then what do you do in your workouts? What do you do in the testing? And that's where you could see guys rise and fall in the draft. So there's always a gamble and a risk to performing, because if you don't perform well, it could hurt your draft stock. Or if you get hurt, God forbid, it could hurt your draft stock. But if you perform well, there's at least a chance that you can raise your draft stock. And that's what these 3 guys have in front of them. So we're going to go through each guy and talk about what we see. But I'm very much looking forward to just seeing them all perform, seeing what the numbers are. And Trev, you kind of nailed it. As people start to dive into film more, you're hearing more and more people talking about guys other than just Jeremiah Love. And I think that boils down to, like, there is a lot of laziness where people just look at Notre Dame and they think, oh, Jeremiah Love, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, this Raridan guy's pretty flippin' athletic. This Malachi Fields guy's pretty good. This Jadarian Price guy might be the number 2 back in the draft class. Boy, this Billy Schrouth guy's a pretty good football player. And I think that's what you saw. It's like Notre Dame didn't rank in the top 3 in yards per play and points last year just because of Jeremiah Love.
Right.
You know what I mean, Trev? Like, there's a lot of other reasons why Notre Dame kind of had the production that they had last year, because as a unit, it was a very talented unit. It was a very talented offense. And some of the best players are gone. Some of them are coming back. But the reality is this is a team that is very impactful. And ironically, Jeremiah Love averaged 7.3 yards per touch last year. Jadarian Price averaged 9.2, thanks to kick returns. So, there's some dynamic players coming back for Notre Dame or coming out for Notre Dame. And I think that the combine gives them a chance to kind of prove that.
Oh, it does. I mean, based on what kind of performances these guys put on at the combine, it's not an outside shot that within a weekend Notre Dame could go from having one projected first round draft pick to maybe 3. I've seen Jadarian Price predicted in the first round to the Houston Texans. I've seen Malachi Fields projected up into the first round. Obviously, with the kind of given is Jeremiah Love. Jeremiah Love's going in the first round. It's just a question of when and where, not if. But it is an if with Malachi Fields and Jadarian Price. But this weekend, they're really going to be able to put on a showcase. I think Jadarian Price is going to blow people away with his numbers that he puts out on the field, on the on-field drills, and with his 40 and the vertical jump and things like that. But yeah, I'm very interested to see what they do. We can go here in order, Brian, if you would like.
Yeah.
Kind of breaking these guys down in the order that they're going to be working out. Eli Raridan, tight end at Notre Dame, he starts working out here, and really the time frame is wide open. Tight ends work out 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. And then on Saturday, receivers, quarterbacks, and running backs work out from 1 to 9. And then Sunday, offensive linemen go from 1 to 5. So a little bit interesting in there. But let's kind of start with Eli Raridan here, Brian. And this is a player that's very, very interesting to talk about because athletically, his skill set is off the charts. But there were some reasons for his lack of overall production throughout college. And so now down here in Indianapolis, he has the opportunity to put on display what he's truly capable of. Very excited to see what he does this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're talking about a guy, Trev, that was on the freaks list this year for Bruce Feldman. You're talking about a kid who's over 6'6", over 250 pounds, had a 34-inch vertical jump, 9'10" broad jump, 350 bench, power cleans 335, squats 535. Ryan and I used to joke that he had the world's fastest 10-yard split because there were reports that he had like this crazy split that was would have been top 5 amongst, as a freshman, that would have been top 5 amongst receivers at the NFL Combine and would have made Kyle Pitts look slow. I don't think that was ever true, but the point is he can run. Even after the ACL injuries, he can run. I don't think he'll test as well as maybe he would have before the 2 ACL injuries. But as we saw last year, Eli Raridan can still run. I think the big thing for him, there's a couple things about him that are going to be interesting is, number one, the medical checks are going to be very important. He's going to have to make sure that all of that tests out well. Because there's some teams that will just take a guy off the board if he doesn't pass certain medical aspects. They may view him as too big of a risk. That's just a general comment. I'm not saying that's going to happen to Eli Raridan. That's a general comment. But I think for him and Billy Schrouth especially, that's going to be a very important part of the combine. Then it gets down to the workout part. And for Eli, he's going to have to test well. I could see him running in the 4.5s. It would not shock me if he runs in the 4.5s. I saw this company, if you've seen Real Analytics, they do like the speed testing and things like that. They were doing something. I'm actually going to try to look that up while we're talking, Trev, but they were doing kind of predictions for the 40-yard dash. I think their predictions are a little bit, how do I say this? I think some of their predictions are a little bit generous, maybe a little too guy, like they've got certain guys running times. I'm going to be a little surprised if the guy runs that. Like they got a guy, wide receiver or DB from Mississippi State that they think is going to run a 4.19. They've got Damani Jackson at 4.2 flat. I don't see that happening.
Breaking the 40 record? No.
Yeah, I don't see that. But actually, he's a wide receiver from Mississippi State. But when you go to the tight ends, let me find a so running backs, they have Jeremiah Love 4.41 to 4.45. I could see that. The tight ends, I'm trying to find it right here because they had Eli Raridan running between the 4.47 and a 4.51. And they had 4 other guys projected to run in the 4.4s at tight end. I'd be a little surprised if there's that many tight ends. But if Eli Raridan even sniffs the 4.51 at 6'6", 255 pounds, he's shooting up rankings. The film is a little inconsistent. The film as a route runner's inconsistent. The film as a blocker's inconsistent. But when it's good, it's really good. And so what people are going to see is a guy that's played a lot of football, a guy that produced as a senior, a guy that is going to have some good film. He can play in line. He can play outside. He can play detached. He's got good one-on-one ball skills. We saw him make some very tough catches this year. I think of the NC State backside seam route that he caught in between two guys. You think of what was it? He had a great two-hole throw catch against Arkansas this year, back shoulder catch against Arkansas he had this year. So he can make some of those tough catches. And the film, like I said, is going to be – it's going to have some really good film. He's the kind of guy that the testing, if he balls out, could say, let's go do a rewatch of Eli Raridan. And we could see him jump way up the board at the tight end position.
Yeah, absolutely. With how different tight ends are being used right now in the NFL, if Eli Raridan performs well in the 40 and then like the explosiveness drills, broad jump, the vertical jump, and then really shows out in the on-the-field drills, and like the pass-catching gauntlet, routes on air, things like that, I think he has the opportunity to shoot up draft boards. Now, barring him probably running something like if he dips into the 4.4s or if he's like a 4.51 type of thing, I don't know if he's going to be taken in the first 2 rounds. Right now, Mel Kiper has him as the 4th best tight end prospect, but it's why you can't really look at just 40 time being everything. I mean, Dalton Kincaid for the Buffalo Bills was a first-round draft pick. He ran a 4.71. So it's not everything, but Eli Raridan absolutely has the chance to impact his draft stock this weekend. Hopefully he can go out and put on a show. That's absolutely for sure. Let's talk about another Notre Dame pass. Oh.
Let's just real quick with Eli. Where do you project? Where do you think? Like, I think he's going to run in the 4.5s. I do. I think at worst he's very low 4.6s at worst, but I think he's actually going to run in the 4.5s. If he does, do you think that gets him into day 2?
Into day 2, I think so. Back half of day 2,
That's round 2 and 3. Okay.
Yep. If he runs that, so. I have him anywhere from like a mid 4.5 to like a low 4.6. I mean, look, but tight ends in the league right now, even some of the more athletic ones, because, and I'm not saying that you're saying this, but a lot of people just look at like what Kyle Pitts ran in the 40. It's like, oh, that's what tight ends should run now. It's like, that's not the case. Kyle Pitts athletically is a little bit of a unicorn there, but guys like, George Kittle and Travis Kelce and players like that, they're not running 4.5s.
It's also about your game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, what's your game? You have to have a speed that fits your game. And if you're going to have Kyle Pitts' size and Kyle Pitts' game, you better run fast. Because if you can't run fast, what are you going to do? I think it's a great point, Trev. And that's why I'm saying I think for Eli, him running really fast is going to make people get back into the film. And I think they're going to start liking the film more and more as they study it and say, boy, this guy's got a chance to be a pretty good player. When you consider he missed like basically a full season and a half of injuries, like he still has some development there for his game, in my opinion.
Well, and it'll give a lot of NFL GMs a peace of mind about his injuries because, if he goes out and he runs something like a 4.75, you're kind of left with gosh, imagine if he didn't tear 2 ACLs or whatever injuries that he had. Imagine if he didn't have 2 significant lower body injuries in college, what would he have ran then? Whereas if he goes out and he puts up a 4.54, a 4.51, something like that, then they could say, man, I mean, he's doing that despite having 2 significant lower body injuries. I think that's going to be huge. Another player, Brian, another pass catcher from Notre Dame that's going to have a big weekend is Malachi Fields. After his performance at the Senior Bowl, he really started to gain some traction, rising up some NFL draft boards where some guys like Daniel Jeremiah had him projected to go in a couple of mock drafts at the tail end of the first round. He has the frame, he has the size, he has the experience of a pass catcher. The couple things limiting him right now is he doesn't have some of the gaudy numbers that a lot of other first-round wide receivers might have had throughout their careers, but athletically, the dude's a freak. We knew that. Another player on Bruce Feldman's freak list. Ironically enough, he was a freak at Virginia, but then he wasn't when he went to Notre Dame. Not really sure what that's about, but Malachi Fields is also poised to have another big weekend.
Yeah, this is a big one because the thing that's big for somebody in the chat literally said they'll be surprised if Eli Raridan gets below a 5 flat. Like, I'm like serious. I think they're being serious. Okay. Like, this is what sometimes I just lose my mind. Like, what are you watching? Like, I'm sorry. That's like one of the wildest things I've ever seen. I'm sorry. Malachi Fields is interesting, Trev, because if he can test well, the film's great. You and I will agree. The film is excellent. Not just what he did at Notre Dame this year, but what he did at Virginia the last couple of years as well. This is a guy with well over 2,000 yards the last 3 years. So I think there's a lot of very good film. But what makes him unique in this draft class is a lot of the receivers that are viewed above him or around him are guys that are more they're just very different body types than what he is. So if you're a team looking for the bigger body type, like teams are drafting different types of receivers. You just can't say, well, I need a receiver, so give me that guy. Well, and not everybody runs the same system.
Sure.
Not everybody runs the same kind of offense. Some teams that are going to run more, West Coast or more, you got to have real precise route runners. You're gonna want somebody that's like 5'11" to 6'2", and you're gonna want, you're gonna value things that Malachi Fields doesn't necessarily bring to the table. Other teams kind of want that big-bodied boundary type that can go make a lot of plays. And if you're that guy, then you're gonna really like quite a bit Malachi Fields. So I think when you look at the other receivers, though, that's something where I think he could really perform well. If he can really perform well at the combine, he could really raise his stock. Because if you look at the top receivers in the draft, you got Cardinal Tate, who's a bigger receiver, 6'3", 195, but he doesn't have the game of like a boundary guy. Jordan Tyson is, he could maybe play. He's 6'2", 200, very different body type. Mekhi Lemon's 5'11", 195. Denzel Boston's is a very similar body type. Chris Brazzell is a similar body type, but a different game. Zechariah Branch is 5'10", 180. Casey Concepcion's 5'11", 190. Omar Cooper, 6 foot, 200 pounds. Jeremy Bernard, 6'1", 205. There's only a couple body types here. I think Malachi Fields has film that can stack up against Denzel Boston and Chris Brazzell. What I think a lot of people are projecting, however, is those guys are going to test better than Malachi. If that changes, now we're having a different conversation, in my opinion. And now he might be that, because there's almost every mock draft I see has Denzel Boston in the 20s. Malachi goes out there and blows up at the combine the same way that Chase Claypool and Miles Boykin did. He could go in the first round, because the reality is his college tape is better than Miles Boykin. Sure. And his work ethic and attitude is better than Chase Claypool's. And so that is absolutely something that I could see. I'm confident he's going to jump well. I'm confident the broad jump is going to do all that. If his agility numbers are similar to what Bruce Feldman claims they are when he had him in his freaks list in 2024, that'll really stand out. But I think if Malachi can somehow crack 4.5, and I don't know that he can, but if he can get sub 4.5, I think that changes the game for him. The closer he gets to 4.5, the better it solidifies him as round 2. Like, locks up round 2 for me. If he can get sub 4.5, I think you could see some teams in the bottom of the first round fall in love with him. Because people compare him to Keon Coleman. Number one, I think he's a lot faster than Keon Coleman. Number two, he has way better hands than Keon Coleman, even in college. So, and a longer track record of production. So I think this weekend, you could argue that there's not a player on this board for Notre Dame who has more to prove this weekend, or I should say more to prove, who has more on the line this weekend with a dominant workout than Malachi Fields. I think everybody else is just trying to somewhat cement themselves. Janarian Price, just cement yourself as number 2. Jeremiah Love, cement yourself as number 1. Eli Raridan has something to prove. Billy Schrouthy, but I think Malachi Fields could make himself a lot of money if he can go out there and really test well on Saturday.
Agreed completely. I think he has the most to benefit from a strong weekend down here. Agreed completely. The biggest thing with his 40 time and why I think it's so important is there's basically every single NFL team, they don't do what Notre Dame does, and they just go field boundary. Like, it's not, oh, you're a 6'4" guy, we're just going to keep you in the boundary. I mean, the best examples, honestly, that body type is slowly even starting to phase out of the league even. The best receivers in in all of the NFL right now, I would argue, are all 6'2" or shorter, with a couple of exceptions in there. Like you still have like T. Higgins with the Bengals, Mike Evans with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but even those two players who are both 6'4" and 6'5", they aren't just strictly in the boundary. And that's what running sub 4.5 does for Malachi Fields. I think it would give a lot of NFL offensive coordinators more confidence, like, oh, okay, so we can match you up in the slot and you can still go make plays there, not just in the red zone. We could put you to the field and you'll be good there. That's going to be a huge thing because I have no question that he's going to be able to perform in the on-the-field drills. I think that he started to prove that worth in the Senior Bowl during that week of practice. So the 40 time is going to be huge for him.
Yeah, because, Trev, I'm looking at, to your point, I'm looking at NFL stats for this season. And if you look at the top 15 pass catchers in the NFL amongst receivers, you've got Nico Collins at 6'4", 222. He ranked 9th or 8th amongst receivers in the NFL. And you got George Pickens, who's 6'3", 200. He was top 5. Cortland Sutton at 6'4", 216. He was a 1,000-yarder. He was at number 12 amongst receivers. And that's it. As far as top 15 receivers, because what you're seeing from a lot of teams are they're just getting the athletic tight ends. And those guys, like the Trey McBrides, the kid from Bowling Green that went to Cleveland last year, they're just getting those guys, and those guys are doing some of the things that the big 6'4", 220-pound receiver used to do, unless you're running fast. And so like when you look at like DK Metcalf, what boosted him way up people's rankings? It was he went and had a great combine performance. He went out and ran real fast and jumped real high and did all those kind of things. So, I think I don't expect him to run a 4.33 like DK Metcalf did, but if he gets sub 4.5, I think that could have a big impact on him. But if he just runs a low 4.5, I think that locks him into day 2 and probably round 2 based on what I'm reading. But I do think you could see, I think him and Denzel Boston are battling for that number 1 big receiver in this draft class. And right now, everybody's got Denzel Boston as that number 1 guy. I would like to see Malachi Fields in that conversation more. I think he deserves to be in it just off film. But if the speed and the athleticism checks, then I think you could see him jump up in that.
Let's talk about real quick the obvious first-round draft pick of the bunch, Jeremiah Love, who oddly enough, and I know that he won't, this was just kind of cool to look at, FanDuel has Jeremiah Love tied for the 4th best odds to get drafted number 1 overall. It's at like plus 12,500. So it's not going to happen. Obviously, it's going to be Fernando Mendoza, most likely, barring something crazy. But I just thought that was interesting that he had the tied for 4th best odds to win. Now, he is tied with like 16 other guys, but still cool to put out there. But kind of getting back on track, one of the more, I guess you could say, shocking things about this weekend is Jeremiah Love is actually going to participate in the on-the-field drills. Initially, I thought that was pretty interesting because it's, okay, well, you're already the number 1 running back prospect by any reputable NFL draft analyst. You can't be more number 1 than what you are now. I think some of it goes into him wanting to just solidify himself as number 1. Shoot, maybe he could even think that the guy behind him who wore number 24, who lined up in the same backfield, might start to push him for that a little bit. But sometimes I think it just comes down to him being a competitor and maybe wanting to increase his odds of getting into that top 6 or 7. But Jeremiah Love will be doing the on-the-field workouts this weekend.
I'm surprised. I mean, look, I thought he might do drills, show off his pass catching skills and things like that. That part didn't surprise me, but the 40 time surprised me. And as I said the other day, I have to believe that part of the reason he's running a 40 is because he thinks he's going to run a really fast 40.
Yeah.
A 6 foot plus, 200 plus pound Jeremiah Love with his film running a 4.3 something, I think is going to be impressive. Like I saw, and again, you read all types of stuff. There's a lot of just stuff out there. You know what I'm saying, Trev? But I saw some Giants reporter talking about how there's internal discussions about Jeremiah Love at number 5. Now, a lot of times when I hear that stuff, I don't actually think that they are thinking about taking him. When it leaks out this early, it's usually because they're wanting to create the buzz to maybe get somebody else to jump up and take him, either jump in front of them so that way who they want falls, or maybe they want to trade out And so the Chiefs are sitting there at 9, like, man, we really want Jeremiah Love. Let's trade up and get him. I mean, right now, if you want Jeremiah Love, you're looking to trade up to 7 or 8. You're trying to get in front of the Chiefs, basically, based on what everybody's projecting. If all of a sudden the Giants are seriously thinking about him, then, and I'm saying that to make a point, then maybe now you need to trade up in front of them or them if you want to get Jeremiah Love. I don't know that that's going to happen, but I think that's where it comes from. But the point is, you're starting to see the buzz about Jeremiah Love rising above that 8-9 level. Let him go out there and run a 4-3 something, and I think that could really take advantage. Now, to me, there's not a lot of risk for Jeremiah Love because he's not going to run a 4-5 unless he falls. He's going to run a mid 4-4 at worst. That's my opinion. I don't know that he's a 4-3 guy. I'd say worst case, he's mid 4-4s, right? 4-4-5, something like that. If Jeremiah Love runs a mid 4-4, and with the film he has, he's still by far the number one back in the draft class. I don't think that at all changes the opinion of teams that may look at him from 8 to 15 at all. So I don't think he can hurt himself. The only thing I think he can do is help himself in a draft class where he is by far the number one pick. And look, if you look at, I'm going to actually pull this up here real quick, Trev. If you look up salaries of the 2025 NFL draft class, the difference between 9 and 5 is that's good money. I mean, the number 9 pick is projected. This is looking at Spotrac, Spot Rack. I don't know how you pronounce it, or Spotrac. That's why I'm going to do it. The number 9 pick, let's say he goes number 9. The total value of the number 9 pick is $31 million. The total value of the number 5 pick, where the Giants are, is $45.9 million. The signing bonus for the number 9 pick is projected to be around $19 million. The signing bonus for the number 5 pick is around $29 million. So you're talking about him jumping up 4 or 5 spots is $10+ million of guaranteed money that he's going to get. That's why he's contemplating moving up in the draft class, in my opinion, and should, because there's a lot of people say he's one of the top 2 to 3 players in the draft. Can you convince a team to look at him the way that, enough to where they say, boy, he's a generational player. We got to go take a chance on him. He's a top 5 pick. And I think that's what he's looking to prove this weekend. And hopefully he does.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the 2 comps that he draws comparisons to are Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson. Jahmyr Gibbs ran a 4.36 and Bijan Robinson ran a 4.47. If Love is just somewhere in between those 2 guys, I think he's really benefited himself. I really do. I think that's going to be huge for him.
Yeah, it is. And he's a different body type than those guys too. And I think that's something that plays a role in it. Jahmyr Gibbs is 5'10". See, 5'9", 5'10". How big is Jahmyr Gibbs? Let me look it up real quick. He is listed at 5'9", 199 at the combine. Bijan Robinson at the combine was listed at 5'11", 215. Very different body types to Jeremiah Love. And I think that's what makes him so unique is he I think he fits multiple systems. So like I said, if he can run fast, jump high, do all that, and then look good in drills, because he's going to impress people when they meet him as a young man. You're going to be the only people that won't like Jeremiah Love are the people that think that football players should only care about football and have no other interests outside of life. Those meatheads are not going to probably like Jeremiah Love as much because he is into other things, but the real ones will be like, this is an amazing kid. You're not going to have to worry about him getting in trouble. You're not going to have to worry about him being a locker room problem. You're not going to have to worry about, those things aren't going to be an issue for Jeremiah Love. You're going to get a great young man and a great football player. He's got to now give reasons for the top 5 teams to say, no. You don't want to pass on somebody that you all know is a worse football player than me because of value. Come get me. And I think that's why he's working out at the combine.
Let's talk about the other running back coming out of South Bend, Jadarian Price, who I would argue behind Malachi Fields he probably has the second most to benefit from having a strong performance at this combine, because he's the other player on this list that could vault himself potentially up into the back end of the first round. I think his film speaks for itself. His production during his last really 3 years in South Bend has started to speak for itself. And Mel Kiper had him going at the end of the first round in one of his latest mock drafts. So Jadarian Price will be competing same day as Malachi and same day as Jay Love. So very interested to see what he puts on tape as well.
And so what he's kind of trying to do, Trev, is he's trying to solidify himself, not just as the number 2 back, because I don't think that's going to be hard. I've seen draft analysts that I like that have talked about after the 2 Notre Dame kids, there's a big drop off. Like I saw someone, and I don't know if it was Dane Brugler or somebody else, but I was listening to somebody talk about it, and they said after Price, you may not see another running back get taken on day 2. So the thing for Jadarian is you can't let anybody else sniff that number 2 running back in the draft class ranking. You've got to go out there, perform well in drills. So I think a big thing for Jadarian is obviously the medicals are going to be fine. He had an Achilles as a freshman, and hasn't anything other than normal bumps and bruises since then. So he's going to test out. He's a great kid. He's a great young man. He's going to test. He's going to, meetings are going to go well. He's strong. I mean, I think that's something people are going to see him like with the tight shirt on and be like, dude, this kid is jacked. Like this is an impressive looking athlete. The 2 big things for Jadarian are you got to test well, which is true for everybody. Can he get into, mid to low 4.4s and really show off that? Because there are actually people that question his speed. I literally read this from somebody the other day that they're like, I don't know that he has the long speed. And I'm like, guy with 300-yard kick returns for touchdown and like multiple 50 to 60+ yard touchdown runs. Like, I don't know what you're talking about, but whatever. But he can answer any of those critics if he goes out there and runs a mid 4.4 or better. But the big thing for him beyond the testing, Trev, is I want to see him perform well in the position drills. I actually think the position drills are just as important for Jadarian as the testing. Because what's the big knock on him? Can he add value as in the pass game? Right? The pass pro film got better this year, but it's still not great. Can he catch the ball? Well, he only caught 14 balls his entire career at Notre Dame, if that. Now he was good when he got the ball in his hands, but I think he caught 6 passes this year. 2 of them went for touchdowns. So there's not a lot of that proven track record. Like Jeremiah Love caught over 40 balls the last 2 years. I mean, he's a legit weapon in the pass game. You got him running corner routes for big plays against Arkansas this year. I mean, you can go pop on the slot fade last year against Arkansas or against Texas A&M in 2024 when he just smoked a DB on a slot fade, ball didn't come his way. Or you can watch him on the wheel route, the one-handed catch on the wheel route against A&M this year. There's all those type of things that make me say if he can answer those questions in the drills, I think that locks him into that RB2 role. And why that matters, Trevor, is because if there is, in fact, considered a giant gap between 2 and 3, and again, this isn't me saying that. This is what other people have said. If there is, in fact, a big gap between 2 and 3 and Jadarian can solidify that, his value goes way up. Because now if you're a team that needs a running back, if you don't take him late 1 or early 2, the drop-off in what you're going to get at running back out of this draft class, because this is considered by a lot of draft experts a very, very shallow draft class at running back. If he can lock that in, then all of a sudden there's a bit of a who's going to flinch first, late first round, early second to take Jadarian. And so I think the combine could have a big hand in that. Big hand in that.
Let's talk about the guys who's going to be working out on the final day of the combine this Sunday, talking about Billy Schrouth and Emil Wagner, 2 offensive linemen coming from Notre Dame. And stories for them are a little bit different. For Billy Schrouth, we kind of talked about earlier, it's one of those stories of like, hey, look, when the film is on and he's on the field, man, he's impressive. The biggest question for him is, can he finish the duration of a season? He has yet to complete a full season of college football. 23, he just didn't get the opportunity. 24, he missed a good chunk of time. And then obviously he sat out the rest of 2025, missed the entire month of November. So that's going to be a big question for him. Medicals will be huge for Billy Schrouth, but he does have other opportunities to perform as well.
Would you say that that's the absolute most important thing for him, is just getting in front of team doctors and passing those?
Yeah.
Just showing that there's no. So what does it mean? Number one, he needs to show that his injury from this year's healed. He's healthy. He'll be good to go for mini camps and stuff like that. That's number one. Bigger picture, though, what they're looking for, my understanding of talking to different people, is they're looking for structural damage, meaning like there's an issue here that's going to lead to this knee not being good for long term. Yes, he's healthy now, but I see this concern. I see that concern that makes me think that sucker's not going to hold up long term. That could be the difference between being a day 2 pick and a round 7 pick or an undrafted free agent. I mean, because if you get 15 teams that just lop you off their board, your chances of getting drafted just astronomically went down because there's just 15 teams that won't even consider you. That's always a concern when you talk about a guy that's missed really 2 chunks of seasons. Now, neither of the injuries were like permanent, like long. He would have, from my understanding, from talking to people at Notre Dame, he was expected to be back for the playoffs. And he only missed, 4 games in 2024. Both times they weren't like his injury history, his medicals are going to be different than what people are going to be looking at with Ashton Craig next year, who's had 2 just season-ending big tears, bad injuries, like season over. Billy was like out a month or 2, and then he was back. So I think that's going to be the big thing for him. I don't know what testing goes into the combine that really moves the needle, but yeah, if he moves well in drills, I think drills matter more to NFL teams than the 40. But like the shuttle, they want to see explosiveness. They want to see a guy that's got some lower body power. I think the bench can matter certainly for them. But it'd be nice for him to put a show on at the combine as well. But the big thing for him is just going to be check out. The medical's got to check out. If he does that, then I think he's going to have a shot to be one of the 4 or 5 top guards in this, top interior linemen in this draft, because the film is really good.
Yeah.
It's just the kind of film that leaves you wanting more. Like when you watch him against USC, you're like, dude, this might have been the best game of his career, and you're like, I just wanted to see him again the next week, and like, boom, season over.
Yeah.
That's what frustrates you.
It is, man. I mean, Stroud, again, when he's on the field, he's an absolute dude. He didn't allow a single pressure in the playoffs between Georgia and the national championship game, according to Pro Football Focus. Not a hit or sack, not even a hurry. Not a single pressure was allowed by number 74 in the playoffs. He was playing his best football in the game that he got injured. It's unfortunate, but putting out that film and having that film out there is going to be huge for him.
So here's some crazy stuff for you, Trev, to back up your point. The last 2 years, according to Pro Football Focus, Billy Schrauth has played 603 pass snaps. 603. In the last 2 seasons, in those 603 pass snaps, he has allowed 10 total pressures, 1 sack, 0 hits on the quarterback in the last 600 snaps last 2 years. He gave up 8 pressures in 2024 that you talk about what he did in the postseason, Trevor. He allowed 3 against Indiana. The next 3 games, none. None against Georgia, none against Penn State, none against Ohio State, to Trev's point. And they were playing some pretty good defensive linemen in those games.
Yeah.
And I remember him struggling in the first half in the run game against Penn State. And then the second half, that first drive, I'm like, dude, Billy Schrauth came out like, if we'd have found out that Joe Rudolph got in Billy Schrauth's face and challenged his manhood at halftime, that's the kind of reaction you'd expect to see. I don't know if that happened. I'm just like, it just reminded me like, we just saw the men's Olympic hockey team win gold medal, first time since 1980. Always reminds me of the movie Miracle, right? Like there's that scene where Herb Brooks gets on, Rob McClanahan, I think is what his name was, right? And questions his manhood. You're an injury, you're soft. Oh, you want to see, and what do? They come in, he's like nailing people, just like, hitting them up, checking them on the boards and all that. Like that's how he played in the second half of that game. And they ran right behind him on the first 2 plays of the second half too, man. They went right behind him against Penn State. And what I think helped him this year is the pass blocking has always been really good. What helped him this year, Trevor, is he got more consistent as a mover in the run game. Because he was just he was inconsistent as a run blocker in 23 and 24. When he was good, he was really good, but there was inconsistency. The consistency he had in the run game this year was what really raised the bar on top of, to your point, the elite pass pro, which was really good in 24 and became elite in 25. It was the run blocking jump that I thought, to me, is going to make the biggest impression with people when you look at the performance that Billy Schrauth had in 2025 relative to 2024.
Let's talk about the final offensive lineman and the final player that's going to be competing in the combine this weekend, and it's Emil Wagner. And this is a very interesting player to talk about for this weekend because there's not really a whole lot of injury history to check out. He is started, I think he has started every game the last 2 years for Notre Dame at right tackle. Hasn't missed a game due to injury or anything like that. When you just look at the raw numbers on Pro Football Focus, he had a rough game against Miami, and then he was pretty locked down in a good way for the rest of the season. But then the film doesn't always necessarily speak to what the numbers look like. So Emil Wagner has a very interesting, I guess, weekend ahead of him at the draft. To your point, he's going to impress every single person, every single media outlet that he talks to. Because I think it was Pete Bavacqua who talked about him in a press conference and was like, if he ran for president one day, it wouldn't surprise me. He's just has that type of personality. Yeah. Exactly.
There's a reason he was a captain for the football team this year, and like a no-brainer captain. And anyone that you talk to around the program will tell you, like, he was up for, what was the award he was up for? The Walter, it wasn't the Walter. There was like 2 awards he was up for this year that are based on character, community involvement. Just everything you want. I think Pete Bavacqua was like the kind of guy you'd want your daughter to marry. Didn't he say something like that too? I thought he said something like that. But like, when you have that expression of like, oh, it's the kind of guy you'd want your daughter to marry. Yeah, that's kind of like, I don't have a daughter, but if I did, like, okay, high character, educated, intelligent, polite, cares about giving back to the community, raised by great parents. I mean, everything, like, box check, but you know what I mean? Like, okay, cool. That's kind of where I'm at with Emil. Now, the question is going to be the football stuff, Trev, and that's where I think Emil's going to have to prove some things this weekend at the combine.
Yeah, absolutely. To your point, he was a finalist this year for the Jason Witten Collegiate Man of the Year Award and the All-State AFCA Good Works Team. Also a finalist for the Freddie Solomon Community Spirit Award. So he was up for a lot of the character awards for football. So whichever team elects to take Emil Wagner, you're getting a good person. You're getting somebody that helps build a locker room and all of those different things. Well, that being said, sometimes you look at him and will he be one of those offensive linemen? It's like, hey, this was a good collegiate player. But a lot of where people get drafted, and if people get drafted, go down to fit. And for Emil Wagner, we're talking about an offensive tackle that has decent size. He's 6'6". He's hovering in between 300 pounds. But I would argue that he started playing less consistent football once he got over that 300-pound mark. He was a more consistent offensive tackle at 294. How was he going to hold up at the next level at 294 pounds? So, for Emil, it's interesting. If he tests well, I think he still gets drafted? I do. He's a 2-year starter at Notre Dame, ended his career as a captain, but I don't think any performance at the combine vaults Emil Wagner up into day 2. You know what I'm saying? I don't think he's going to be a 2nd or 3rd round pick. I do still think he gets taken. It's just a question of when, not if, for him. But a strong weekend down here will really help him out.
The weigh-in will matter. The athletic stuff will matter. If you're going to be an undersized guy, you better check out pretty well athletically. And I think the strength stuff's going to matter as well. I think it is an important weekend for him. I do agree with you, Trev. I'd be a little surprised if he doesn't get drafted. He's very steady. His 2025 film was very steady outside of after the first 2 games. It's very steady. His 24 film was, we said this last year, he wasn't there. There was never a stretch where I felt that Emil Wagner was their best lineman for like a stretch of 3 or 4 games. There were stretches where I thought Billy Strouth was. There were stretches where I thought Anthony Knapp was in 2024. There were stretches where I thought Rocco was their best lineman. There was never, and then of course the last 2 games, I think Charles Jagasaw was their best lineman in the last 2 games. There was never a stretch where Emil was their best lineman, but what we said was he was their most consistent lineman. I mean, I think the only game that I remember him just being bad was the Louisville game where like pretty much everybody was bad in that game. And he was bad because I think they didn't know what they were doing. There was just some blown protections and stuff. But like when he got hands on hands, he was fine. It was bad from the just blownness. I mean, they're running and crossing his face in quick game. And you're like, that says to me, they don't know what the protection is. And that was the bigger issue. It's not like Emil Wagner can't block a dude slanting across his face in quick game. We've seen him do it every other, you know what I mean? Like, so I think the film is fine. It's not going to blow you away. It's not, it's not going to be bad. I saw some film of him at the Shrine Bowl. I thought he looked quicker and had a better base in those drills than I thought he showed at Notre Dame. I think that teams are going to look and see that he wasn't coached overly well from a footwork standpoint at Notre Dame. That's just a reality. And I think there's some tools to work with that I could see some NFL team falling in love with, as long as you think he can physically hold up at the next level. And that's going to be the big question mark.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other things that's really going for him as well is he has faced some top-level talent at the college level over the last 2 years. I mean, he's gone against Abdul Carter, Denai Dennis Sutton, Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau. He's gone against, Akeem Mesidor and Ruben Bain. And so he's had quite a good track record of really, outside of the Miami game, at the bare minimum, he's held up. I don't think he ever really dominated any of those players, but he also didn't get dominated really in any of those other matchups as well. So, yeah, I think he has that going for him as well. But, folks, that's kind of a recap of who's going to be competing down here in Indianapolis for the NFL Combine. You can watch all those. Really, it starts here in the next 35 minutes, really until Sunday at 5 p.m. Notre Dame will have guys competing throughout the weekend, but that's also going to do it for us in part 2 of today's show. Don't go anywhere. We're getting ready to continue the show. But before we get there, be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell. Be sure to share this podcast with your friends and family. Anybody that you know loves Notre Dame and college football as much as you do. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, in part 3 of today's show here in the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, we're actually taking a jump back. Actually, we just got done talking about the NFL. Now we're going to switch gears and we're going to talk some high school football. And we get a lot of really good questions in mailbags and in buy sell holds about who some of Notre Dame's top targets are. And Brian is starting to put down some breakdowns on the premium message boards at irishbreakdown.com. All the more reason to be a premium message board member, of just names to know. And now that the quarterback list has been out for quite some time, a couple days now, we're going to talk about, 3 of the names to know. Yeah, quite some time, 3 days. Time moves pretty fast in our world, bro.
It does. That's what was so funny about what you just said. It's been out for a long time now, at least 3 days,
At least 72 hours it's been out there. So, in our fast ever-moving world.
I put the running back one out 2 days ago, and I've already had to add a guy to it, because they offered a running back. I'm like,
sure.
But no, that struck me as funny.
No, it is, man, in our ever-changing world. But there are 3 names out there that we kind of want to break down in the 2027 class of quarterbacks to know. Obviously, what's led us up to this point is 2027 commit Teddy Gerard reclassified to 2026, and he'll actually be on campus alongside Noah Grubbs and Blake Hebert behind C.J. Carr in the summertime. And so it left some question of, okay, they're still going to bring somebody in the 2027 class. After Brian sat down and talked to some people, we found out that they will be. And, Brian, these are kind of the 3 names that we know that they're kind of looking at.
So we were told before the offers went out that they were going to take a quarterback in the 27 class. And then, of course, in the last month and change, they've actually offered 3 quarterbacks. Champ Mons was the first one. And then they offered Davin Davidson. And then, of course, Cam Lapati. They offered both of those last 2 on the same day. And I think it's important that they do get a good quarterback in this draft class. Or this, my mind's still on the draft. In this recruiting class, because number one, quarterbacks can have an impact on recruiting. Now, I think Teddy Gerard is still going to be very impactful in 27 recruiting. But I think having a quarterback in that class also helps. I also think it's good to stack up depth at the position. There's a world in which we go into the 2027 season and it's Blake Hebert and the 2 current freshmen. And that's it. And you might want a talented player to kind of come in and be part of that. So there are 3 guys on the board now. I won't be surprised if at some point in time the board expands. I don't think they're done with these 3, but I think these are the 3 right now that are going to be on the board. And so we're going to start doing a little bit more recruiting here over the next several months on our Wednesday show especially. This is technically our Wednesday show because it was meant to be our rundown yesterday. So I thought it'd be good to start off a quarterback, Trev. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to watch a little bit of film and just kind of talk about where they are. And the first guy that we're going to talk about is I was about to say Abraham Cisse because somebody just said something in the chat. But Champ Mons is a very intriguing player. It says 2027 quarterback. He's only been a 2027 quarterback for about 5 minutes. He reclassified from 2028. So Teddy went up a year, Champ's going up a year, and then Notre Dame is on him. He was a kid that was very productive as a. I mean, I guess you could kind of say it was his freshman year now, Trev, right? A very good freshman year for Vero Beach. Was injured some last year. He hurt his non-throwing shoulder, played 5 games, including he played a little bit in the state title game as he was kind of coming back, and they lost to Lake Mary in the state championship game. Obviously, that's the home of Noah Grubbs, and Noah Grubbs led Lake Mary to the state championship. So Champ Mons is a very talented player. He's got some big-time schools after him. He's not ranked as high as I think he will be, Trev, and I think there's 2 reasons he's not ranked real high right now. Like, when I mean real high, I mean like top 50 quarterback. He's ranked 212 overall by Rivals. He's ranked 93 overall by ESPN. 247 astonishingly has him as a 3-star, which I think is absolutely bonkers. Florida's a major player for him. Ohio State, Miami, Florida State, Tennessee, like crazy offer list. But the other part of it is he didn't play much of last year. Only played parts of 5 games last year. So I think people are going to want to see film. Once he goes out in the summer circuit and the camp circuit, if he does that, or the 7-on-7 circuit, and then when people see him playing as a senior, I think his ranking profile is going to blow up. And I think there's a reason Notre Dame offered him first. So let's watch a little bit of film, Trev. And I think the first thing that you guys are going to see from Champ is a guy with just outstanding arm power. And he just has a very strong arm, bit of a I kind of call it a shotgun thrower. Like, it's not a real, like, you know, he doesn't have like the full motion. He's back and he's gone. You know what I mean? And it comes out, Trev. It's a compact release, but the ball just explodes out, just really explodes out of his hands. Go ahead, Trev.
Yeah,
interject anytime, bro. It's talking film. Go for it.
Yeah, man. I mean, it looks effortless. I mean, he's putting this. I mean, that was a far-sided hash throw, and he puts that on the money, right. And it looks effortless. To your point, he doesn't have a big crazy windup. He's not overstriding. That the ball pops out of his hand.
Watch his base throughout. Like, this is one thing I love. Watch these 3 throws that he makes right here. This one you can't see as well, but watch all 3 of these. Look at that base. He never loses the base. And the thing I like about that, Trevor, is because he keeps his base throughout his drop, right? Like, bam, base is there. He's always able to quickly get that torque, even a little bit of quick torque. That's one of the things I've argued that I want to see Teddy Gerard do a better job of is he comes off of that back foot too quickly onto his front foot, which saps some power. Champ has a really clean back to front transition of weight and energy in his throw, and he's already got a naturally strong arm anyway. And I think that's something that helps. But like, look at all these throws, Trev. That base just doesn't lose it. And it's real quick. You mentioned, I think the compact part that you mentioned, I think is absolutely spot on. But look how quickly he recovers. And Trev, he makes that throw. This is a 30-yard seam throw from the far hash that he just flicks it like it's a quick slant.
Well, and this is the second clip on his highlight tape so far where he's had to reset. On that earlier throw where it was that screen, that pump and go, he sells the pump fake hard, and then he resets back to that base, and his mechanics are back in flow. I mean, it's spectacular.
Well, and it allows him – so this is a good one here. This is one of my favorite clips because what happens here is he's making a read, so he's going to hit a guy working on a little backside over route. He sees a blown coverage. He's got to get to that route quick. That route you don't expect to come open that quickly. Because he keeps his base so good, and it's just such a clean base, he's always in position to throw. And so when he sees this receiver come open quickly, he can quickly go from drop to throw and speed up the upper body because the base is already set. What happens with a lot of quarterbacks in a situation like this is when they see a receiver come open quick, they have to then get their feet set, then throw. And that can create some issues where with Champ, his feet are already, bam, right there sound. And so he can speed up that upper body, and it's clean and crisp and allows him to be accurate as a thrower. Yes. And that's something that – and this is him as basically a sophomore in high school, essentially. Yeah. So Champ was a sophomore this year in high school. And then reclassified. He'll go from sophomore to senior year. He technically won't ever be a junior. But look at that. He keeps the ball ready. Look at this. Look at his eyes downfield the entire time, Trev.
Oh, yeah. I mean, very poised as a passer. There's a lot of things that he does that kind of reminds me of CJ. I mean, his base is spectacular. I mean, CJ had a throw like that in the blue gold game. I think he hit like Alex Whitman or Leo Scheidler. One of the two. It was the final touchdown he threw in the blue gold game.
This is
Where
another example right here, Trev, by the way. Just look how quickly he gets the ball out. Just he sees it, bam, right on point. Go ahead.
Yeah, to your point about his base being set, it allows him to get the throw off quicker. And that's something that we've seen from CJ Carr the last couple of seasons in the blue gold game, and then now obviously in games throughout the season.
Look how quickly he can get that ball out. And a lot of guys that have that shotgun motion that he has can't do that as well. But it really is it's the feet. He has some of the best young footwork I've seen from a quarterback. Now, there's some inconsistencies with his upper body mechanics that will get worked on in time. But when he throws like this, Trev, this is as good as it gets. I mean, that is clean. Look at the feet. Quickly set, boom, drive off that back foot. See that? And then just snaps it off like it's nothing. Boom, hits the guy right in stride in front of the safety. Big time play. Big time play.
Yeah.
Like the arm talent with this kid is outstanding, Trev.
It is.
Absolutely outstanding.
Well, I mean, and the other thing I'm seeing too is it's a young kid, essentially a sophomore in high school, that's not afraid to attack the middle of the field. That's also rare. You see a lot of younger quarterbacks where, like, you see the arm talent, you see the mechanics, you see the potential, but a lot of it is outside of the hash. A lot of it's in the numbers. This kid's somebody who's not afraid to attack the middle of the field.
And look, he's a quality athlete, and as you see right here, he can make plays with his legs. He can scramble. He can move the chains. He's not a runner, but he can run. What I like about Champ is he's a good athlete, but he wants to sit in the pocket and beat you in the pocket. You saw it on a throw earlier, Trev, where he's running to the right, and he eventually takes off and scrambles. But until he gets to the line of scrimmage, he's got his eyes downfield looking for somebody to hit.
Yeah.
He's looking for somebody to find. And I think that's a great fit for what Notre Dame wants in this offense is, Mike Denbrock wants a guy that can run, but the priority number one for Mike Denbrock is and always can you dominate from the pocket? And I think that Champ has that potential. Certainly has that potential. So another guy on the go ahead, Trev.
I was just going to say, I was agreeing with you. I was like, yeah, absolutely. He's much more advanced as a passer in terms of like his technical prowess, especially with his footwork, than a lot of sophomores, for sure.
Yep. The next young man we're going to talk about, Trev, is Davin Davidson. Now, this is a young man that has a little bit of a Notre Dame connection. He's a high school teammate. He also led his team through the state championship game this year. They won a state championship at Cardinal Mooney. He goes to Cardinal Mooney High School in Sarasota. If that school sounds familiar to you, it probably sounds familiar for two reasons. One is it's the high school of Elijah Golden, signed with Notre Dame this past year. It's also the high school where Jared Clark is the head football coach. Jared Clark is a former Notre Dame player. Jared Clark was part of one of my favorite Notre Dame quarterback classes ever. He was in the same class as a quarterback coming out of Cardinal Mooney with Carlo Holiday and Matt LaVecchio. They were all in the same class. Jared Clark was actually my favorite quarterback in that class. And I still wish he would have had a chance to play quarterback in college. But he ended up getting moved to tight end and all that. But I really liked him as a quarterback. But so Davin is from his high school, that same high school. This was his first year as a starter. And one thing I like about what they did at Cardinal Mooney is Coach Clark did not ask him to carry that team. He was a bit of a game manager, but they just kind of let him play within the system and just make plays when you can. And what you saw from him, Trevor, is he's got a little bit of gunslinger to him. He's probably the least clean mechanically of all the quarterbacks, but then he can make throws like that, and you're like, yeah, the mechanics will come. What you can't teach is 6'6", 210, and what you can't teach is throws like this. Like that's a third. Look at where he throws it from. That's the 30-yard line. He's fading away. He just turns and flicks it into the end zone 30 yards like it's nothing. Right in stride. Now, is that a throw that you're going to want to make a lot in college? Probably not, because that's probably a throw where Tay Johnson is stepping in front of the ball and picking it off. But it says a lot about just the God-given ability this young man has. He is just now starting to scratch into the surface of what he can be. Still raw, relatively clean mechanics, just not consistent. But throws like this are what get you fired up about what this kid can be. This is an absolute flipping rope. He throws this from about the 30-yard line to the other 30-yard line like it's on a line, Trev. That is on a line from 30 to 30. This kid has loads of arm talent, super raw, but also has a lot of talent. And look, part of the reason he's the most inconsistent of the three, part of that is because he's 6'6" with long arms. Usually kids that are as long as him, their ability to harness their throwing motion usually takes longer because there's a lot more to it. There's a lot more moving parts, so to speak, when you've got a 6'6" arm delivery than when you're a 6'2" guy with the kind of arm length that most 6'2" guys have. But the arm talent, Trev, is really impressive. He's got a lot to learn, but he's got another full year of high school left. But big time tools with this kid, Trev.
Yeah, right. I mean, right now he's just out there playing ball, like this backyard football, but you can see it. You can see the potential when he sits in the pocket like this and delivers something on time, plants off his back foot and drives it. Dude has an absolute cannon. Yeah. Out of the three, I would say this is probably my favorite film to watch because it's very, it's off script. He keeps his eyes down.
You like the guns. I want to say something because sometimes when people use the word street ball, they look at it as like an insult, like, oh, I can't read deep. No, it's street ball for Trev and I is a compliment. You're just out there making plays. You're not sitting in perfect three-step, Steve Spurrier drop back, Bill Walsh drop back. You're just out there playing ball and making plays. And you're absolutely correct, Trev. He has the most fun plays of the three guys that we're going to watch as a passer.
Yeah. I mean, and look, the last time Notre Dame made a national championship was with a quarterback that was playing street ball. I mean, that's what Riley Leonard did.
Correct.
And they went all the way to the title.
Exactly.
Believe me, it's a compliment. And this kid has more arm talent than what Riley Leonard had at this stage. I mean, and I don't know if that's overly debatable. This kid's a lot of fun to watch. When he makes the decision to go, he's an accurate passer. He'll be even more accurate when he gets his mechanics fixed. I mean, this is an impressive kid.
And real quick, just a couple things to point out. This throw right here is against St. Thomas Aquinas. Okay, that's a dime. This next throw is against Jacksonville Bulls in the state championship game. Like, this is a state title game throw, folks. This isn't just some, like, you're playing some D2 team that's 0-10. This is against Bulls. These are throws against St. Thomas Aquinas. Like, that's the thing I like about him is he's being challenged. And that's what I appreciated, that when you watch game film, they don't ask him to carry the team the way that some other highly ranked quarterbacks are because he's a first-year starter. I actually think it was brilliant by Coach Clark. Next year, he'll be asked to do more. And I think he'll be more prepared to do more. He's got the talent to do more. And when I say do more, do even more from the pocket. They let him kind of play that street ball. That's kind of how Jared Clark was as a quarterback. Next year, I think they'll ask him to do even more from the pocket, more running the offense and things like that, now that he has a year under his belt. But the tools are there. Like, this is a rope. His ball carriage is a little inconsistent. See, like right there, I know you're doing play action, but once you do the play action fake, you got to get that ball up a little bit. But, man, that's what happens sometimes when you got long-arm kid. Yeah. That'll get cleaned up just with experience. But, like, throws like this, Trevor, are why he's blown up right now as a recruit. I mean, really blown up as a recruit, and why Notre Dame is on him. Like, the arm talent is very impressive. Yeah. Like, somebody in the chat compared him to Deuce Knight. I don't think he's like Deuce Knight. I think he's tall like Deuce. He's not nearly the runner that Deuce was. I think he's a more natural passer than Deuce was at the same age.
Yeah.
Like, he's comfortable from the pocket. Deuce might have had maybe a stronger arm, maybe. I don't even know if that's a given, but, like, look at this back shoulder throw from the 35 to the other 35. You know what I mean? Like, he makes hard throws look super easy. And sometimes, like, when you first watch the film, you're almost kind of like, did he really make that throw? Like, it almost looks so easy for him that it didn't even look like that hard of a throw. And then you had to go back and, like, count the yards. Like, dude, he threw that from the 30 to the 30. Like, that is a rope. And that's what I think you'll see from especially the first two kids is the ball explodes out of both of their hands. Really explodes out of their hands. And it's just so – you use the word effortless for Champ Mons, and I feel that way about Davin as well. He's just not as consistent with his effortless throw. Because, like I said, he's got the long levers that just need some time to harness, which he will. With Jared Clark coaching him especially, I think he will. But that younger quarterbacks – Trevor Lawrence had a little bit of this too, even early on at Clemson, where he would miss some deep throws because those long levers as a passer took a while to get used to. Davin goes through some of that on game film. You don't really see it on highlight film, but on game film you see it a little bit. He'll have some misses that are related to his release point was off. But as he gets more experience and throws like this become more regular, I mean, Trev, he flicks this from the 20 to the 25. Not even at the 20. Actually, is that the 30? Let me make sure. Yeah, that's at the 30. He backfoots this from the 28, and it lands at the other 25. That's a 47-yard throw, and he's just tossing it. Like, no problem. Like, oh, let me just throw, like, this over the top, in stride, perfectly thrown post route. It's a lot of arm talent here, man. A lot of arm talent.
Oh, it's impressive. I mean, I get shades of not quite of what he was as a runner, but if he can fix some of his mechanical issues, and again, some of that's just going to come with maturation. I've always wondered what Everett Golson was going to look like if he was 6'6", and there's a little bit of that, man, with just the pure arm talent. This is impressive.
Yeah. This is against Aquinas as well. Yeah, he's got loads of tools, Trev. Loads of tools. Yeah. I like this kid a lot. Like, I really like all three of these quarterbacks. Like, I'm in a position now where it's like, which one do you want? Yes.
Yeah.
Like, you get one of these three kids, you're pretty happy with where you are at quarterback. There's no question about it. It's got to get one of them, because they're all three starting caliber quarterbacks, and they're all three talented enough, in my opinion, to come out and challenge Teddy Gerard and Noah Grubbs and Blake Hebert at some point in time. They're not guys that are just guaranteed you're going to sit the bench until so-and-so's done. Like, they're going to be able to compete, and they have the talent to compete, and that's what you're always looking to do. I mean, this is when I was a coach, that was, when I was recruiting courts, it's like, guys, look, we're trying to go out and get better kids than we got last year. And then next year, we're going to go out and try to get better kids than we had last. That's what you do as a coach. You keep trying to get better kids every single year. And everybody's going to pick some people like Mon, some people like Lapati, some people like Davin. They're all talented quarterbacks. And I'm totally on board with anybody picking anybody as their favorite. Depending on what type of quarterback you like, if you like a little bit more structure, you're going to like Champ. If you like more gunslinger, you're going to like Davin. If you like more of a true dual threat, you're going to like Camden Lapati, who we're going to watch next, who's the one true dual threat of the group that we're going to talk about. They're very different players, and people are going to like guys more or less, but the reality is they're all three really good football players, and you understand why these three guys are so high on the board for Notre Dame.
Yep. And the biggest benefit of all is we've watched Mike Denbrock have loads of success with all three different styles of quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Structured, gunslinger, dual threat. Very excited.
Yeah. Now, one of the reasons why you need to be on the Irish Breakdown message board is because this is actually all of this film and my analysis right here. And I put this out for free. That's why I'm showing it to you, just as an example, because I want people to, I'm going to do this for all positions. We've got one on running back, got one on receiver. I'm working on the tight end one, but I'm going to give you kind of, my thoughts and analysis, and then I include the film. So if you want to watch some film, you can watch the film. And then now we're going to dive next into the film, Trev, of Camden Lapati, who is an Illinois commit that I have a feeling is not going to end up with Illinois, because there's some big-time programs coming after Camden. He is a talented player from Utah, big-time production. He is the true dual threat on the board in this of these three players, Trev, because he is a true run-throw quarterback.
Yeah, he is. Sidebar, the quickest thing that I had to get used to was him wearing number 0. I thought the first time I ran through this highlight tape, I thought he was number 8, and it was messing me up seeing that he was number 0.
Yeah. I've literally never seen a quarterback with that number.
Same. It was interesting. But skill set wise, you and I were talking about him a little bit before. Before they fixed his mechanics, he has a little bit of Tyler Buckner to him as a runner and as a passer. He's
let
a
me
little
rephrase
bigger
for you, Trevor. Before they ruined his mechanics.
Yeah. Yes.
And we're talking about Tyler. Yes, I agree with you.
Unfortunately. But
exceptional
athlete. But the one thing that I appreciate about Camden Lapati is that with a lot of dual threat quarterbacks, they make plays with their arms because they're just such a good athlete. He's actually relatively mechanically sound for a dual threat athlete that's playing quarterback.
Yeah.
It's not like he plays for a high school where it's just, hey, he's their best athlete and they're putting him at quarterback. He might be their best athlete.
He's not Devin Dampier.
Right.
As a quarterback. Right, Trev? Like, where he's kind of Devin Dampier's the modern day Woody Dantzler. Like, he's an athlete that can play quarterback. This kid is a quarterback who's an athlete.
Yes.
That's how I describe it. Yeah. He's talented player.
Very.
What I think too, Trev, is he is a smart. He can make plays from the pocket. The only thing that I would say about Camden, I'd say his arm strength is just a touch below the other two kids. Like, I don't think it's quite as strong, but he still has plenty of arm strength, and he can make the throws that you need to make in the Notre Dame offense. He's also the most proven of the two. He has the most high school production so far. He's a 2-year starter. Thrown for well over almost 6,000 yards so far in his 2 years. He's also has over 1,300 yards in his career rushing.
Yep.
So he's very productive, and his athleticism, in my opinion, that translates. I mean, honestly, if you want to compare him to somebody, he's a better throwing Bear Bachmeier. Like, that's how he's a better throwing Bear Bachmeier. Similar frame that what Bear had as a junior in high school, similar arm strength, but I think he's a little bit more natural passer, dual threat, but he's not like a Deuce Knight dual threat. You know, like that's a different kind of athlete. I think Bear is my comp, but I think I like his arm better than I like Bear's arm coming out of high school.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good comp. Similar play styles. At this point, Camden Lapati is a much more refined passer than where Bear was. Yeah, I agree. How long ago did he commit to Illinois?
Good. It's been a minute. Let me go look it up real quick, Trev. So that's his film. So we got done with his film, but let me just look this up real quick. So Camden Lapati, let's see here. So let me go pull that up real fast. So he is the most the highest rank. What's funny is I think 247 real quick on July of 25. So it was back in July 27th of 2025 before he really obviously blew up as a prospect, of course. But what's interesting is, so ESPN and On3 Rivals have both Camden and Davin as 4-star quarterbacks, and they have Davin, Champ, and Camden as 4-star quarterbacks. On3 has all three of them ranked as 3 stars. Like, did you watch those? Do any of those kids strike you as a 3-star quarterback?
No.
Any of them? No. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So I think those 3 kids, Trev, are guys that I'm very high on. Very high on.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. And I don't think that it's a coincidence that Notre Dame is starting to attract this level of talent at quarterback after what CJ did in 2025. He enters this season as a Heisman favorite. Bunch of different outlets, friends over at FanDuel, also think the same of CJ Carr.
Mm-hmm.
So we talk a lot on the show about, the recruiting impact at wide receiver that CJ has, kind of that tertiary effect. And we're starting to see it at the quarterback position too. Obviously, Mike Denbrock and Gino Guidugli's continued development is going to help there too. But it opens up a whole new world when it comes to quarterback recruiting with this stuff. And those 3 kids are talented.
They are. And I'm sure at some point in time they'll add guys to the board if they don't think they're going to get one of these 3. Here's what I think Notre Dame's going to do at quarterback recruiting. I think they're going to kind of see how the next month or 2 goes and try to get these kids on campus. See how once they get them on campus, kind of get a read. Like, do we feel like we've got a shot with any of them? Do we feel like maybe we lead with some of them? Like those are things that you want to kind of try to find out. And if you do, then great. You try to get them. I know Champ is already scheduled for a visit on April 18th. I'm not sure about Davin and Camden. I'm not saying they don't have visits scheduled, but I just don't have it on my visit schedule yet. I'll look into it. But Champ's already scheduled for a visit. He is coming. Let me see here. He's coming April 18th. So you're going to get him on campus for sure. I think what Notre Dame's going to do is try to get through the spring and see where they stand, at least through March and April, and see where they stand with these 3 kids, unless somebody else just really knocks their socks off in their evaluation. And they went out and saw all these kids during the spring. When they did their winter, they went when their January visits, they went and saw all these kids. I think if they feel like they've got a shot to close on one of the 3, then maybe they don't expand the board. If they're not sure that they're going to get one of the 3, I think that's when you'll see them expand the board. But these are the 3 kids that they really like the most. And these are 3 very talented quarterbacks, Trev. Very talented quarterbacks. Just got to get one of them. I think if you get one of them, then you've got a shot to get. I mean, I think all three of them are going to jump way up in the rankings. Camden right now is the most consistently high ranked. I think Champ will end up as the highest ranked when it's all said and done. And I think Davin might have the highest ceiling of the three. This is the way I look at it. Champ is the best combination of floor and ceiling. Camden, I think, arguably has the highest floor. I think Davin has the highest ceiling. That's how I would rank the three of them. So they're really talented. They're really good quarterbacks.
It's a good conversation to have when all three of the guys that we're talking about are foundationally 4-star guys.
Yep.
I mean, that's a heck of a spot to be in.
Yep.
That's for sure.
Yep. No doubt.
Folks, that's going to do it for part 3 of today's show. We are going to wrap this all up by talking about breakouts on the offensive side of the ball. But before we get there, be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know whenever we go live. Whatever streaming platform you listen to us on, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review. But as always, the best way to stay in tune, you guys just saw a little sneak preview into what the premium message boards look like and the type of breakdowns that Brian's putting out there almost every single day. You're going to want to make sure that you are a premium message board subscriber at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Brian, it is time for the moment that we've been waiting for here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We're talking about the offensive breakout players for the 2026 season. Now, we're copying what we did last week with the defensive breakouts. And now, just a friendly reminder, there's different levels to breakouts because there's going to be some names that we talk about that some people in the chat, and I guarantee it's probably still going to happen, and that's okay. People are going to hear a name that we're going to say, I think that guy broke out already last year, and that's fair. There's different levels to it, right? And so we're talking about what 3 levels. First one is you didn't play much last year, and now you're a key part of a rotation. The second level of a breakout is, hey, you were a key rotational player last year. You had your moments, but now you're stepping into the starting lineup or, given the position, playing starter level snaps. And then finally, the last level of the breakout is, hey, you were a starter last year. Now you're a dude on this team. We saw what you could do in your first or second year as a starter. Now it is time to kind of burst onto that national scene and be that guy that we all think that you can be. So with that in mind, we have 4 breakout players each. We'll snake them back and forth. And then obviously, like we do, there's always other players. Because, Brian, it was a little bit more difficult for the offensive side because there were so many options. There were on defense as well.
Yeah.
But I felt like defense was a little bit more clear-cut. This one, it's a little interesting.
And I think they play more. I mean, with offensive line, you've got basically who you think are the 5 starters, and you could pick some of those guys. Defensive line, you could pick 10 different guys because they're going to play 10 different guys. So I think that makes it interesting, Trev. And so I'm going to start off this time. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to bring this player's high school film up because we were just talking about quarterbacks. And so it might be fun to remind us of what he was as a junior. We just watched junior film. So we're going to remind ourselves of what he was as a junior in high school. And that's obviously CJ Carr. And watch just a little bit of film of while we talk about CJ, reminder a little bit of his junior film. But I'm going CJ Carr. CJ Carr had a level 2 breakout last year. Didn't play and became a pretty good player for Notre Dame last year. Pretty good player. Set the program's all-time record in passer rating last season and didn't just break it, Trev. He destroyed it. He was over 168. The previous record, which was tied with Jimmy Clausen, who tied it in 2009. Before that was by Bob Williams back in the 40s. So obviously a very impressive record, and then also had one of the 3 or 4 best yards per attempt averages in program history as well. CJ last year ranked in the top 5 in passer rating, ranked in the top 5 in yards per attempt, had a really outstanding freshman season. He had an outstanding season for a freshman, a redshirt freshman. Now the breakout that I see from CJ is you go from being a really good redshirt freshman quarterback to you just become an elite quarterback, period. No, for his age, for his experience. It's just now he's an elite quarterback. And that's the breakout that I see for CJ Carr this season. And, just you start to ask yourself, okay, am I over? I try to go through this in the offseason because if you don't stay in the film, if you just try to just remember off of when you watched it and broke it down in September, October, November, it can kind of, remind it of, oh yeah, I'm remembering all the big time throws, but I'm forgetting when he missed that read and did this and did that. And I try to stay in the film of these guys. And so I'm going back and watching film with CJ and I'm like, good Lord, this kid's really good. And then you start looking at some of the things. You say, man, if he can improve there, like, man, if he can get better at throwing the deep ball. Like, remember how good he was against Arkansas, throwing everything but go routes? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
he missed like 3 go routes. And you're like, he threw for over 300 yards and absolutely torched Arkansas. And I'm coming out of that game saying, dude, he could have been better. He missed Malachi Fields wide open on a go route. And I'm critiquing a kid who went 22 of 30 for 354 yards, 4 touchdowns, and no picks, and only played 2.5 quarters on the road against an SEC team. And I'm like, he should have thrown for over 400 yards that game, Trev. Should have. Not could have, should have. And you start thinking, like, dude, if his game takes another jump, even if it's just a normal year 2, now I have experience jump where he's better with protections. You know, the pass protections are set more consistently. The run checks are made more consistently. The post-snap decision is a little bit better that, you know, like I talked about a perfect example. I've said this before. The double slant 3rd down completion he had against Stanford that converted a first down. He hits a little quick inside slant to Will Pauling and moves the chains on 3rd and 6. A more experienced CJ Carr will bang the outside slant to Jordan Faison, even though his read technically was correct. He's going to see the squatting safety in the soft corner and say, this is quarters. If I bang that outside slant, he's turning and running. Those are things that you're going to see now that he's got more experience, I hope. And if he's a better, like just, and I'm talking year 1 to year 2 starter growth, that's it. That makes him a Heisman contender, in my opinion. And I think we're going to see some really big things from CJ Carr this season. So that's why he is my numero uno breakout player for Notre Dame this year.
I mean, I agree with you. And believe me, you're not alone in that sentiment. We talk about it on this show all the time. Our friends over at FanDuel think the same thing. He is still the favorite currently to win the Heisman Trophy. And I don't think that that's a coincidence. Along similar lines, Brian, my first breakout player, I'm also along the same lines, talk about somebody who's going to make that jump. And I'm talking about offensive lineman Gerby Lambert. He flashed last season, and he started all 12 games as a redshirt freshman. Even when he was rotating in the Miami game, he was rotating with Sullivan Absher, but then he quickly solidified himself as the starting right guard at Notre Dame. And then, due to an injury, he took 1 snap all season at left tackle, and you and I are under the assumption and under the belief that that was the best snap a Notre Dame left tackle had in 2025. Gerby is a player that I think is going to go from, okay, you were a good starter, had your up and down moments as a redshirt freshman, to I think he explodes onto the scene. Back at right tackle, back on the exterior of the offensive line, hopefully in 2026. He is going to have an All-American caliber type of season, and we're going to be talking about him in a very similar way of, hey, I had the same talk about Leonard Moore. Hey, in 2025, can you be good just for a corner, not really good for a true freshman? For Gerby Lambert, it's, hey, can you be good as a redshirt, or can you just be a good offensive tackle, a great offensive tackle in college football, not just great for a redshirt freshman? That's what I view the type of breakout for Gerby Lambert this year. All the tools were there. You're going to have a 5-star caliber player now starting at one of the edges. I think Notre Dame's going to get a bump in their play from the right tackle position. As you guys are going to come to find out as the show goes on, offensive line is going to be a common theme here because we believe that a derivative of a lot of their success this year on offense is going to be won or lost in the trenches. I think Gerby Lambert's going to play a huge role there. There were moments on film where he absolutely looked like their most dominant offensive lineman. And then there were other times where you kind of watch it. It's like, yeah, it's a redshirt freshman. It's a 19 or 20-year-old playing in his first year of college ball. I think this year, a lot of that gets put behind him and he starts dominating people on a weekly basis. So my number one guy is going to be Gerby Lambert.
Well, 5 Adam, who I believe is an Alabama fan, said if the Notre Dame offensive line pass blocking is great, CJ Carr will win the Heisman. And that goes right into what you're talking about here with Gerby Lambert. I think this is a big one, Trev. I think Gerby is a guy that has a chance to be a really special player for Notre Dame. We saw it last year. I mean, you could argue by the end of the year, the most impressive film of any of the players was him. I did that mid-zone breakdown, so I haven't got to the rest of them yet. I've got all off season. And now that I know we won't have a lot of spring access, more of that stuff will be able to come out. I'm not complaining. I'm saying, like, More of that stuff will come out during the spring when we don't have practices and things to go by. But when you watch it, you're like, there's one guy constantly further downfield than everybody else, and it was Gerby Lambert, and that's a good thing. On zone, mid zone, you want to initially work laterally, then you want to work vertically. One of the issues that I thought Notre Dame's offensive line had last year is they didn't get a great vertical push. They would do it well laterally, but they couldn't get a vertical push, except for Gerby Lambert. I mean, there were so many times he's driving his guy 3-4 yards off the line. And you're like, dude, when his footwork gets cleaned up a little bit and he gets a little bit more experience, like this guy's going to be a monster. So, Trev, you think he's going to be a top-tier breakout this year, correct? Like you're talking about going to postseason honors and things along those lines. I completely agree with you. I'm actually going to kind of flip my order up a little bit, Trev, because I think it's going to flow better this way. Because I'm going to stay on the offensive line for my next pick. And I'm going to go Anthony Knapp. And the reason I'm going Anthony Knapp, look, I thought Anthony Knapp was going to take a jump in year 2, and he did. He didn't take quite the jump that I thought he would. I thought he was going to be an All-American caliber player. I just don't think the Notre Dame offensive line as a unit played well enough to get All-American status. And as good as he played in the last 10 games, you can't get dominated as much as you got dominated in week 1 and be an All-American, in my opinion. You know what I mean? And the Miami guys absolutely dominated him. So when I look at this one, Trev, I think Anthony Knapp is poised for an All-American season as well. And part of the reason why is I think you're going to finally move him inside. And, we have a video out explaining why we think that is and where that justification comes from. But I just think inside you just turn Anthony Knapp loose. And now he doesn't have to play in space the same way. His athleticism plays extremely well inside. His power plays well inside. And you don't have him playing on an island anymore where he was just never comfortable. He doesn't have to do these deep threes, these vertical pass sets that, you got to let Ruben Bain get a running start and then smash into you, 5 yards down the field, Now you're coming off and you're anchoring pretty early in pass pro. And so I just think those things are why I think Anthony Knapp, if this in fact happens and they move him inside, has a monster All-American caliber breakout season. And the combination of these two is a big part of the reason why I do think the Notre Dame offensive line is going to be outstanding in 2026 is because of the foundation of those two players.
Oh, absolutely. And you need your anchors on the offensive side of the ball. And I think that's going to be those two guys. They're your most experienced returning starters. I mean, Gerby Lambert started all 12 games. Anthony Knapp has 27 career starts under his belt right now, heading into his junior season. I love that pick as well. My next pick, I'm going with the running back. I'm going with Aeneas Williams. And it's not going to shock me if the other running backs, I'm not going to get ahead of myself. I'm sure we'll talk about some more of these guys down the road, but I'm going to go with Aeneas Williams. And I would argue, Brian, be interested to get your thoughts on this. I would argue that Aeneas has the opportunity to have a multi-tiered breakout, going from like a key rotational guy to a dude. Now, a lot of that's going to be dependent on Gerby Lambert and Anthony Knapp having the types of breakouts that we think, because he's just a different type of runner than Jeremiah Love. But Notre Dame has strung together a really good track record of guys that have gone from being a rotational guy to the number one guy, having that multi-tier jump. Audric Estime was the rotational back in 22. He was splitting carries with Logan Diggs. He takes over as the primary guy in 2023, and he has 18 rushing touchdowns. Jeremiah Love also rotated a little bit in with Audric Estime in 2023. He becomes the main guy in 2024, bursts onto the national scene, and he's an absolute dude. I have all the reason to believe that opportunity is now on the table for Aeneas to go from hey, he's a rotational guy. When he gets in, he's flashy. We've seen him explode. I have all the reason to believe that he's also going to have a breakout. At the minimum, he goes from key rotational guy to a good starter. But in an ideal situation, he goes from key rotational player to he is now adding to the conversation of Notre Dame's kind of just cranking out running backs. I think he has that ability with his abilities as a pass catcher, where Jeremiah Love kind of had to catch up to that. Now, some of that was usage. Some of that was things that he individually had to work on. I don't think it's a mystery that Jeremiah Love worked with the wide receivers quite a bit this past offseason and in the spring. Aeneas Williams is already there. And so the dual threat ability that he brings to the table as the number one running back right now, I think is exceptional. And so I have Aeneas Williams as my second breakout player.
And unlike a lot of guys who were just kind of backups, we've seen him in big, high leverage situations, from him as a freshman. He's played in the Orange Bowl. He's played against Georgia. He's played against Ohio State in meaningful snaps. Meaningful snaps. We have an Alabama fan in our chat today who's really ticking me off, Trev, because he keeps stealing my thunder. Okay, Five Adam, stop stealing my thunder. Okay, man, just give me a second to say it. My next breakout's Will Black.
Yeah,
and he just texted. He's like, Will Black. I'm like, come on, man, just give me a minute. Let me get this one out. Will Black is my next breakout, and he's that kind of that. I'm not going to jump too far into this with Will Black just yet. Where he's going to be a freshman All-American. Let's see how he does in the spring first. But I think he's going to go from a guy that played no meaningful downs to a solid starter at least as a first-year player. I'm going to hold off on kind of making that big jump for him to be like, I think he's going to be a freshman All-American caliber player for Notre Dame this year, like Gerby was. There's going to be some great moments, and then there's going to be he looks like a redshirt freshman, which is exactly what we saw from Gerby. So my projection for Will Black, Trev, is really just in line with how you described Gerby's growth so far. Showed immediate flashes in 25. By the end of the year, arguably their best offensive lineman, redshirt freshman, then going into the redshirt sophomore year, All-American. And I think we're going to see a similar jump from Will Black. Now, is he capable of becoming like a Joe Alt type star in a year? Sure, but Joe Alt started like 5-6 games his freshman year. Just that experience I think matters. But Will Black has elite talent. I think he'll be like C.J. Carr, Gerby Lambert, Tay Johnson. Freshman All-American good, not All-American good. But freshman All-American good is going to still be pretty good, especially if he has an All-American next to him at left guard, who I'm predicting Anthony Knapp to be, and an All-American on the other side in Gerby Lambert. Like, these are the reasons why I'm thinking this offensive line could be really good, because now the talent's not the question anymore. The talent now is like, okay, having guys in the right position is not as the question anymore if they go with what we think they're going to go with. Now it's about, can you coach them up? But that's why I have Will Black as my next breakout player for the offense.
Love the Will Black pick. My third guy, and I'd be remiss, and Salty would also be remiss if we didn't talk about Jaden Greathouse in this discussion. But it's an interesting one because I know he's going to break out. It's just a question of what degree. I can't consider him a rotational player, even though that's the capacity he was used in 2025. I think Jaden Greathouse has the opportunity to be a dude. Now, he had that same opportunity in 2025, but due to some unforeseen circumstances and usage, and then obviously the injury, the biggest thing for him is going to be, can he stay on the field one way or another? If he is, and he builds that connection with CJ Carr and continues to build that rapport, I think Jaden Greathouse is in for a stellar season. Now, I know everybody in this chat, myself included, is obsessed and loves stats. I don't know what that number is going to look like, but what I can tell you is that I think in crucial moments, like we saw against Penn State and like we saw against Ohio State in 2024, like we saw against Texas A&M this year, albeit it was 2 receptions, they were money receptions. Like we saw it all throughout 2024 in meaningful moments. I think one is going to be your guy. And that's what I think we're going to see from Jaden Greathouse. That's going to be his breakout. Basically a much more athletic and big play version of an Old Reliable. When I think of an Old Reliable receiver, it's like, hey, they're never going to end with a gaudy stat line, but they're sure-handed and they're going to move the chains for you. Kind of like what Sharon Peak was for that Clemson offense. They had like Mike Williams and Artavis Scott, but when they needed to convert a third down, they got it to Sharon Peak.
Yep.
I think Jaden Greathouse is going to be that big play weapon combined with, hey, he's also Old Reliable. So I have him as my third breakout player. I know I'm kind of going back to back here because I predicted him for a breakout this past season, but I really think the stars are starting to align for Greathouse this year.
I love it. I want to see it so bad. There's just something that I wonder if Mike Brown sees Greathouse the same way we do.
Yeah.
I just still can't get past the whole, you're going to push Will Pauling past Jaden Greathouse, even before Jaden Greathouse got hurt. Because look, a position coach can slow a guy's development down if he doesn't think he's the player that we think he is. But, we'll see. Maybe it was where Jaden wasn't as healthy as we hoped he was or thought he was. I mean, there's a lot of things that could factor into it, and I hope those things are the case. But the one thing I'll point out too, Trevor, is you look at the production for Malachi Fields in the first 4 games compared to the next 4 games after Jaden Greathouse got hurt, they weren't even close. He had 15 catches the first 4 games, and he had 8 the next 4 games after Jaden got hurt. He had 48, 77, 78, and 72 yards in the first 4 games, and he went 44, 29, and 52 the next 4 games. I do think because teams were defending Jaden Greathouse early in the season. Like they had to focus on Malachi, they had to focus on the running backs, and they had to focus on Jaden. And Jaden went down. A lot of the pass game focus, you can go back and look at the film, went to Malachi. And I think that took some of that pressure off too. And if Jaden can show early, if him and CJ, I think one of the biggest keys to the Notre Dame's 2026 season being successful is I want to see them force the issue to Jaden Greathouse early. Let everybody know that Jaden from the playoffs is back. Because you do that, now all of a sudden it's a lot harder to lock down the outside guys as well. And next thing you know, Jaden Greathouse has 3 catches for 30 yards, and Quincy Porter goes off, or Jordan Faison goes off, and you're like, man, Jaden didn't do a whole lot. Yeah, look how they bracketed in the whole game, and you got one-on-one outside with Jordan Faison, and he's tearing that corner up. And I think that fact, you could see that last year as well. But he's going to have to – teams aren't going to be afraid of Jaden Greathouse anymore because of what happened in 2024. He's going to have to prove it in 2026. But if he can do that, then I think this offense takes a big jump. Because I think Will Pauling was a nice player last year, but his production was primarily system-driven. And you think of the plays against Arkansas, he catches 2 balls for 50, 60 yards against Arkansas, and they were both wide-open throws where just nobody covered him. It's not because he was that great of a player. It's just they were kind of covering everybody else. So it was a lot of system-driven production. And he was a nice player for Notre Dame. Jaden Greathouse has the kind of production where it's like, dude, that was Jaden Greathouse driven. Think about his big catch against Arkansas compared to the ones Will Pauling had. One guy's wide open. The other guy's making a crazy, ridiculous, acrobatic back shoulder throw and getting his foot down. That's the kind of thing he can do. You think of the catch he had against Texas A&M. And I still say if the O-line would have given them protection, given CJ protection on the first sack on the final drive, Jaden Greathouse was torching the dude off the ball. He was about to catch a ball for 25, 30-yard gain. And so if you can get him going early, that's going to have such a significant impact on the run game and the rest of the receiving core. Got to get him going. My number 4, Trev, I'm going to go away from the line because I've had a couple linemen. I'm going to go away from the line, and I'm going to go James Flanagan. That's where I'm going with next. I'm going James Flanagan. I think James goes from a guy who played 4 games to a red shirt to being a really good part of a 2 to 3 man tight end rotation. I think James is going to end up being one of the top 2 tight ends. It would not shock me. It would not completely shock me if James ends up being the number 1 tight end this year. I'm not ready to predict that just yet, but I think he's capable of it. He's 6'6", 250, good vertical athlete, strong blocker. Like, he's going to have some blocks this year that, like what he did against Pitt, remember the block he had on the counter, touchdown run on the counter? He's going to have about a couple of those a game where you're just like, dude, did you see James Flanagan just destroy that guy? And this is partly why I'm excited about the run game, because remember Cooper Flanagan's block against Indiana on Jeremiah Love's 98-yard touchdown run? You're going to start getting a lot of those 2 guys in the field together this year, and I think that's going to really help the run game. The Flanagan brothers are going to be like you remember, was it the second Mighty Ducks or the third one where they played for Team USA? Remember the two Bash brother type of dudes, right?
Yeah.
When they just like put them in, like that's going to be some 12 personnel plays this year with Cooper and James Flanagan.
Yeah, they're going to be the brothers of destruction. It'll be like Kane and the Undertaker, like that. That's what it's going to be.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I think run blocking at tight end is going to look a lot different this year when those 2 guys are on the field together. Now the question is, what does he do in the pass game? And that's ultimately going to be what determines whether he's a bottom tier drop, breakout, or a tier 2 breakout where he becomes like, that's your guy at tight end. It's what does he do as a pass catcher? Can he get open? Does he understand the pass offense? Does he understand, how to find the soft spots in the zone? He was pretty much just like a vertical player in high school. He averaged like over 20 yards a catch. They would like just throw him the seams and throw him over top because he was just bigger and faster than everybody else he played against. I mean, at his high school, he ran like a receiver for the people he played against. And he's 6'5", 6'6". So he just was able to dominate people. At this level, you gotta know how to run routes. You got to know how to find the soft spots in the zone. You know how to need tack leverage. You got to know how to use your hands properly. There's so much that goes into it. That's the part where I'm a bit of okay, I need to see that from James to determine what level breakout he gets to. But if he can become just a solid pass catcher in this offense, I think he could have a tier 2 breakout. I think James Flanagan has a chance to be a really good football player. But at the very least, he's going to be to me a 5 to 10 catch guy. At least that's a dominant run blocker. That's tier 1. If he's a 15, 20 catch guy and a dominant run blocker, then you start getting up into tier 2.
Oh, absolutely. Love James Flanagan. Very excited to watch what he does this spring. I'm with you. For my fourth guy, I'm actually staying in the wide receiver core. And really, you could go with either one of the two Ohio State players here, but I'm going to go with Quincy Porter. Mostly because I don't think that there's as much in front of him to get on the field as Mylan Graham. Counter is Mylan Graham is probably more physically ready. He's been in college a little bit longer, but in front of him, he's got guys like, Jordan Faison and Jaden Greathouse, potentially Caden Finley, Elijah Burris, players like that. Quincy Porter, the boundary position is relatively open, and he has a body type unlike anybody else's on the roster. He's 6'4". He's like 197, 200 pounds. There's no other 6'4" receivers yet on the Notre Dame roster. And so I think that he could have a breakout this season. Going from what he was at Ohio State, he would get in very sporadically, different situation because he was behind Jeremiah Smith, to where I think that he has the opportunity to play starter level snaps this year. I do think that we're going to see more of a rotation this year from Mike Brown and Mike Denbrock, but I think we're going to see a lot of personnel groupings that include Quincy Porter to the boundary. He has all the physical tools in the world. His contested catchability is fantastic. He brings a little bit of that of what was lost with Malachi Fields, who's getting ready to perform this weekend. But I have Quincy Porter as a breakout. I don't think that he's going to be, an All-American caliber breakout. I mean, it'd be like a freshman All-American caliber. It'd be sick. And I would nice. It sure would be. Wouldn't hurt their chances of winning a natty. But I have Quincy Porter as one of my breakouts because of the skill sets that he brings to the table. I think it matches well and it marries well with a lot of the other skill sets that the other players in the room have. So he's my fourth guy, Brian.
I mean, him going from 4 catches to 50 plus is not unheard of. It's not abnormal. I mean, we see this all the time, Trev, at receiver. Sure. I mean, Notre Dame has had this happen multiple times. I mean, Golden Tate caught 6 passes as a true freshman, and then the next year he catches 58 for over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. We saw that with Equanimous St. Brown in 2015, catches 1 pass for 8 yards. The next year he comes out, has over 50 catches for 961 yards and 9 touchdowns. Saw this from Will Fuller. 2013 as a true freshman, he has 6 catches for about 160 yards. Goes out the next year, has 76 catches for over 1,000 yards, and I think it was 14 touchdowns. This is not an abnormal thing at wide receiver. It's a position where 1 year of experience is enough for you to kind of go out there and take that jump. I'm just not going to predict him to make that kind of jump. Just like I didn't predict that Will Fuller was going to do it. Like, that's asking a lot. But he's capable of it, and I would argue so is Mylan Graham. I think those are 2 young guys. I think Notre Dame, and I'll say it again, I think Notre Dame has 5 young players that are capable of monster breakout seasons. And obviously the 2 Ohio State guys get a lot of the attention. Quincy Porter, like you talked about, rightfully so. And I think your point about the reason he's the most likely is because he's at the position where there's the easiest path to get onto the field, where Mylan Graham's got to compete against Jordan Faison and Jaden Greathouse. But I think Mylan Graham's the other. I think Cam Williams is one. I think Micah Gilbert's one. And I think Elijah Burris is one. I think those 5 players all have the talent to have a breakout season. If one of them has a breakout and we just get normal Jaden Greathouse and Jordan Faison, this receiving core is really, really good. If 2 of them have some level of breakout, first, second, or third tier breakout, this receiving core becomes ridiculous. If 3 of them do, this might be the best receiving core in the country. I'm serious. I'm not being hyperbolic. That's a lot of ifs, right? And that's why we're not predicting it to be the case, but the potential's there. And that's just 3 of 5. And that doesn't even get into Caden Finley. That doesn't even get into Bubba Frazier or Devin Fitzgerald or Braden Robinson. Like, we're just talking, like, there's a lot of guys we're not even bringing up. Just the guys that are returners. If you just need 2 of them really to step up. If 3 of them do, man, it's going to be a fun year. And they're going to have, in my opinion, one of the best quarterbacks in the country throwing the ball to them, which certainly helps. Certainly helps quite a bit. So those were mine, Trev. Let's just mention some other guys that we kind of were looking at in this conversation as well.
Yeah.
I'll let you kick it off.
Yeah, one of the ones that I'm keeping my eye on, and the name of the game for him is literally just stay on the field. It's Ashton Craig. I think that this offensive line could be exceptional this season. We talked about Kirby Lambert. You talked about Anthony Knapp and Will Black. Oh, by the way, they're 6'8", 325 pounds. Sullivan Absher is going to most likely start at right guard if or until 6'6", I guess technically now 6'5", 330 some odd pound Charles Jagasaw gets back if he's deemed healthy enough to play. But who's going to anchor this
in the fall?
Oh, 100%.
He'll go from 6'7" to 6'5" to 6'6". You know what's going to happen.
Yeah, he was just feeling tall that day, I guess. I don't know, standing up a little bit taller. Who knows? But one of the anchors of the offensive line that we haven't talked as much about this season because of the injury is Ashton Craig. When he's on the field, I fully believe that he is a top 10 center in all of college football because their offensive line is better. We can go back and look. Statistically, their units are better when he is on the field in pass protection and in the run game. But the biggest question for him is, will he be on the field? If he is, the ceiling of this offensive line is exceptionally high. And it's still very high if Joe Otting is the center or if they kick Anthony Knapp even further inside. There's a lot of different combinations that they can have. But Ashton Craig is my next breakout player to kind of, if he plays a fully healthy season, it would not shock me if at the end of the year, number 70 in the blue and gold is being talked about as one of the premier centers in college football. You know, overcoming all these injuries, anchoring this offensive line, his abilities. But a lot of that is just kind of pertinent around his health. And if he's healthy, he's one of the best centers in the country.
There's no doubt, Trev. I'm actually doing some math right now because I've pointed this out before with Billy Schrouth, and it's sort of true for Ashton Craig as well. So I'm going to give you a number here in a second of what Notre Dame has done in the run game in games in which Ashton Craig has started. And the number is actually kind of ridiculous. So if you just give me a second to add these all together, it really is an impressive number. So just give me 1 second. He went out of the NC State game, right? That was the last game he played in?
Yes.
Okay, so Ashton Craig has started 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. He started 12 games in his career. And in those 12 games, Notre Dame has gone for at least 190 yards in 7 of those 12 games. So in games where he's played or he started, Notre Dame has averaged, 2,473 yards divided by, what did I say, 12?
Yes, sir.
They've averaged 206.1 yards per game in games where Ashton Craig has started. They've also averaged 5.5 yards per carry. So they're about the same yards per carry in that stretch as they are overall, but they average more yards per game by about, I think, almost 10, a little over 10 in those. So he's been very good, Trev. I mean, you go back and watch him, his first career start where he was like the guy. Like, I don't count the 3 starts in 2023. Those were, guys were injured and, Zeke Krug. I'm talking about when he was like whole offseason, like, dude, we're counting on you. You go watch him against Texas A&M. He was very good in that game. Him and Billy were very good in that game. Just got to stay healthy. That's the big key, Trev. If he's healthy, I think you're spot on. If he's healthy, he's going to get a lot of love as one of the better centers in the country, assuming he's back to full strength. I'll quickly mine. I think one of the other receivers that we were talking about earlier is another one. I think one of Mylan Graham, Elijah Burris, Cam Williams, Micah Gilbert, one of those 4 will break out. I'm leaving Quincy Porter out because you already talked about him. I think one of those other 4 has some level of breakout, whether it's tier 1 or tier 2. I'm not saying, okay, this guy beats out Jordan Faison or Jaden Greathouse, but like Mylan Graham going from 6 catches to basically doubling up what KK Smith did last year would not surprise me. Being a 20-plus 350 to 400-yard guy next year would not surprise me. And then we're talking about him having a top-tier breakout in 2027. Cam Williams doing that would not surprise me. Micah Gilbert doing that would not surprise me. And Elijah Burris doing that would not surprise me. So I do think we'll have one of those guys will kind of jump in at the very least that bottom tier level of breakout.
I agree. And an argument could be made. We talked about this when we were putting together these lists. And a strong argument could be made that you need at least one of them too. It's a fine line between the you need to and the would be nice to have. I think with this receiver room, it's kind of a blend. I agree with you. My last guy that I'm going to talk about to keep your eye out on is tight end Cooper Flanagan. I think he's starting to get a little bit of that, like kind of left behind, forgotten about. And I understand, he was expected to be the bona fide tight end 2 this year behind Eli Raritan before he got injured against Indiana. He was working his way back, similar to Billy Schrauth, to play in the playoffs, especially if they got that break and he would have had the time back to recover. But now a lot of the attention's going to James Flanagan, rightfully so. A lot of the attention's going to Ian Premer, rightfully so. I think Cooper Flanagan enters this offseason with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder of like, hey, let's not forget about me now. I have like 6 career catches and like 3 of them are touchdowns, okay? Like, let's not forget about this. I was our best run blocking tight end before I got injured. And so he brings a little bit of that dual threat ability that an Ian Premer brings to the table, that a James Flanagan brings to the table. And he's been in college the longest. So do I think that he ends this year as, an All-American tight end and a Mackey Award finalist? No. Would I be upset if that happened? No, I would not be. But a breakout for him is he becomes like what a lot of Notre Dame tight ends have been before in the past. Of if you're not a Michael Mayer or Tyler Eifert, you're still a darn good tight end for Notre Dame. I could very well see something like that coming for Cooper Flanagan. So he's the last guy on that list for me, Brian.
I'm going with a running back. Which one that'll be? Don't know yet. But I just think between Kedron or Nolan James Jr., one of those two is going to emerge as the number 2 or even 1B running back this year, where it's a 1A, 1B type of situation. There's a world in which Aeneas Williams is just the guy this year. Like, there's no doubt in my mind. He has the ability to be the guy, 1,000-yard rusher. He could be, Kyron Williams to this offense. There's also a world in which the running back room looks a lot like 2022, where, one guy rushes for 900 something, the other guy rushes for 800 something, and the third guy rushes for 400 something. That's exactly what happened in 2022. I think Audric is like 920. I think Logan was like 822, and I think Chris Tyree was like 444. I think that was the spread of what we saw in 2022. I don't know if the third guy's going to have that this year because, again, we don't know if J1 Sider is going to play a third guy. But I definitely think there's a world in which there's a 1A, 1B, and those two guys are going to be in the battle for that, in my opinion. I think, look, Nolan James gets overlooked. I think Aeneas is a little bit overlooked. They're just Kedron healthy is going to be a stud. Well, yeah, if he's healthy, he could be a stud. There's no doubt about that. These freshmen are studs. Yes, they are. There's no doubt about that. I just also think Nolan James is really flipping good too. And I think both of those guys are going to go into spring, as long as they're healthy, with a chance to say, hey, we're not anointing anybody at running back. It may be 1A, 1B, but I'm 1A. Like, that could also happen. And not because of not thinking Aeneas is really good. It's just that's the talent in that room. If I was a betting man, which I'm not, I'd probably right now put my money on Aeneas being that guy. But I wouldn't put much. You know what I mean? I'm playing with $10 chips, Trev, not $1,000 chips in this one. You know what I mean? Like, I'm hedging my bet a little bit. I might put 20 on Aeneas and then 10 on, and this guy 10 on that. That kind of thing, because I just think the running back talent is better than what people think. Are they Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price? No, they're not. But you know who else doesn't have that? Every other team in college football this year. Nobody's going to have a running back room that dynamic at 1 and 2, in my opinion. There's a couple that are going to be, maybe close, but not quite what those two guys are. Notre Dame is still going to have, to me, one of the 5 to 8 best running back rooms in college football this year, when it's all said and done. Would I rank them in the top 5 right now? No. There's too much inexperience and injury questions, but like by the end of the year, I think they have a shot to be in that range. And it's one of these two guys breaking out will be a reason for that.
Agreed completely. Before we get out of here, Brian, I did have a question for you. Do you have anybody in mind that's like a dark horse that you could see over the course of the offseason that we haven't talked about much on this show yet, but, through spring and then what we hear in the summer and the fall, that we might start talking about a little bit more consistently?
I do.
Who do you got?
Sullivan Absher. Yep. See, you shouldn't ask me the question if that was your guy. because great minds think alike. Trev, like if I was sitting by Trev, I might have got punched in the arm right now. Like I might have got, but not like. Here's the reason I go with Sullivan Absher, because number one, he was solid in his starts last year. He wasn't great. He was solid, first time starter, and he's a guy that I think most people think one of two things about Sullivan Absher. Well, he's the weak link of the starting five. I don't agree with that. The other thing that I think a lot of people think are he's holding down the spot till Charles Jagasaw comes back. And honestly, that might be true. If Jagasaw comes back and he's 100% healthy, he's going to be hard to stay out of the lineup for very long. He's just that talented, assuming he's back to full strength and full skill and all that. But if I'm Charles Jagasaw, the longer you're out, the harder it's going to be to supplant Sullivan Absher. Now that he has a year under his belt, you know, Trev, he played some left tackle in high school because they were a triple option team. So they'd sometimes move him to right to left, but he was primarily a right tackle. I've always felt he looked a right tackle in high school. I've always felt he just looked a little bit more comfortable playing right-handed. And I think the move to right guard is going to be a good one. I think Sullivan Absher is a guy that not a lot of people are talking about. I think they're just waiting for him to get beat out by to Jagasaw. And again, that may happen. That when you're in a room this talented, somebody talented is going to get beat out by somebody else really talented. But I think if Sully is in the lineup all year, people are going to be like, dude, like you know who he could be? He could be the Alex Bars of this offensive line. I've said this a million times. Quentin Nelson and Mike McGlinchey were studs in 2017. But Alex Bars does not get enough attention for how good he was in 2017. I mean, you want to know how good Alex Bars was, just go back to the touchdown run that Josh Adams had against USC in 2017, the long 80-yard touchdown run. I want you guys, later, go back and watch that play from the wide angle, the NBC angle. On that play, Alex Bars steps, and the lineman doesn't come with him. Alex takes his right arm and throws the guy into the A-gap with one hand, and Josh Adams cuts right behind him into the hole. That guy wanted to be in the B-gap. Alex threw him into the A-gap with one hand, and Josh cuts right behind him for an 80-yard touchdown. And I'm like, he was a dog. And he doesn't get enough credit for how good he was that year because of the other studs. I think Sully could maybe play some of that role for this team. Robert Hainsey was that way. Never got the credit that Aaron Banks and Liam Eichenberg and Jarrett Patterson got, but man, he was good instead of week to week to week. I think that's what Sully Absher could be for this Notre Dame team in 2026. I really do.
Agreed, man. I'm very excited to watch him just learn and grow in one spot. It's going to be the first time he's been at Notre Dame where they're just going to plant him at a spot and say, okay, go be great.
I hope.
Yeah.
I hope.
Yeah, here's hoping.
Yeah.
Because they need to, but Sullivan Absher was mine too. Doesn't get enough attention, but he's going to play a very vital role. I mean, he was one of their best offensive linemen against Pitt. He was. And he was going nose up on Francis Brew from time to time, who I don't know if you saw.
Oh, my gosh. I saw that during the thing where he just puts up 475 and the guys lose it. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah, he puts up 475 like I was putting up like 135 back in my freshman year of high school. Like that guy's a freak. He is so strong. Had to get that in there. But, yeah, Sullivan Absher was mine as well. Great pick.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I appreciate you throwing me that hanging curve, by the way.
I got
Trev, we did have a super chat that I wanted to bring up before we get out of here.
From Battle in the Trenches. Appreciate you. Asking for prayers. I had an Uber driver the other day that as we were talking, he told me that his 8-year-old nephew passed away due to complications with sickle cell anemia. Also, please remember Irish for Life in his procedure tomorrow. So
Irish for Life put a text in the chat earlier about how he's got a medical procedure tomorrow. And he deals with a lot of different, he's a disabled vet, deals with a lot of different medical issues. And we always battling through them and we always pray for him, but he's got a procedure tomorrow. Didn't get into what, but that's what Chris is talking about here. So we really appreciate that. And, I just couldn't imagine having to, lose a child at 8 years old. Can't even fathom that. So we'll definitely keep that family in our prayers. And I got your email about that as well, which I really appreciate that. But yeah, I appreciate you, man. Really do appreciate you for the super chat, but also more importantly for bringing that up. We'll definitely be doing that for you, man. Appreciate you. It's good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, folks, that is going to do it for us here today on the Irish Breakdown podcast. At 5:05, the guys on IB Nation Sports Beat go live. They're also going to be talking about the NFL Combine. They're also going to be talking a little bit of quarterback talk, talking about CJ Carr. So be sure to tune in to them tonight at 5:05. Tomorrow, Brian and I will be back at 1 o'clock with the Friday Free For All mailbag. So get your questions ready. Make sure you guys come correct because I'm very excited for this week's mailbag with everything that's been happening lately. Now, on your way out of here, be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell. Be sure to share this podcast with your friends and family, anybody that you know loves Notre Dame and college football as much as you do. But as always, the best way to stay in tune and the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards@irishbreakdown.com. Have a wonderful evening. Until tomorrow at 1, that's Brian. I'm Trevor. We'll see you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown podcast.